Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm, and you are watching second and final part of What If Naruto Was Saved by Dr. Octopus during Chunin exams. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And for more exclusive and spicy content, follow me on Patreon. Link is in the description below. And now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Miss? She mockingly repeated. Has Kumo failed to teach you the difference between men and women? Kumo? I asked again, perplexed. Why would you think you're in Kumo? Let's not play games, she said. You look young. Kumo must be desperate if they're using you to interrogate or guard me. Interrogate? I asked again. Why? I was swept off my feet when the girl jumped out of the coffin and pinned me down while holding a blade made of was that water to my throat. And if you are an interrogator, you must not be a very good one. Here's some free advice, she said. When you interrogate a ninja, be sure to restrain them and block their chakra, especially when that ninja is Tobirama Senju, the Naidame, second Hokage of Konohagakure. Naidame. My mind said, supported by a blade of water that had been created out of nothing, something that only one person in history had ever done. How is this? I thought, and then I froze. Coffins labeled 1 and 2, genetically related brothers. If this is the Naidame Hokage, then the other coffin must be Shodai. First, Hokage. I blurted out the final words out of shock. Before I could respond, a set of tentacles grabbed her arms and yanked her away from me. What about my brother? He asked. I got up quickly and got ready to help my Vader's Octobot. He turned and saw her, his partially formed brother's open coffin. Hashirama. He exclaimed, peering into the coffin. Those seals Edo Tensei Hahua. She exclaimed, closing her eyes and going limp. My family and I asked, what happened? I don't know, Herbert admitted at last, unless this Edo Tensei has the ability to change the neurochemical composition of the brain as well. Orochimaru. She yelled, interrupting Herbert. Why? Why are you doing this? We are loyal. She halted as abruptly as she had begun, as though she had just realized her location. What's going on? She asked, turning her head until we were looking at each other, and I looked into her black, irate, and perplexed eyes. Hold on, weren't they red just now? You're that blonde brat from the Uchiha's team. The name is Naruto, Naruto Octavius Smythe, I replied, and you are? And what the hell is this? She asked, glancing down at the tentacles holding her and then back at me. Kinsuchi, where am I? My questions first. You are one of Orochimaru's soldiers, although you sounded mad at him. Why? The bastard shoved me and Zaku into these coffins, and the next thing I know I'm being covered in something, and then I don't feel like myself, and then I think I was punched in the gut and parts fell off of me, and I woke up with you restraining me. You don't remember making a water blade or yelling about Kumo? Kin looked at me as if I were a fool and asked, what are you talking about? I paused when I realized that the spot where I struck the coffin matched the spot where she claimed to have been struck. I think Orochimaru's fight affected the jutsu, I said. When I looked at the visible interior lid, I noticed that it was severely cracked, with the cracks extending through the seals. But the punch didn't go all the way through. What if the seals responded differently as a result of the cracks, similar to malfunctioning electronics? What are you talking about? Kin asked again, becoming more irate. Your former boss used you to somehow bring back the second Hokage and your partner to bring back the first, I said. How? Kin interrupted Naruto's explanation with a startled cry of pain. Ah! Her head fell and snapped back up, her red eyes glaring once more. Something called Edo Tensei. I don't know how it works, but it did work, and when he used it during his fight with the old man, the coffins you were in were damaged and she, or rather the Naidame, yelled, what have you done with my brother? A ball of water erupted from her mouth, but I managed to avoid getting my head shot off. She was instantly rendered unconscious when the Octobot swiftly grabbed onto her face and released a potent dose of knockout gas. I don't know how this happened, but I will try to fix it, I said, glancing at the downed girl, Hokage hybrid. Author's note. Okay, that concludes it. I appreciate you reading, and I ask that you please review. It's nice to follow or favorite the story, but I also like to hear what you think. It was a gloomy and stormy night. I've always wanted to begin a chapter like that. The battle for Konoha had seen so many fire and lightning jutsu fired into the air that the air eventually became extremely hot, causing a storm. It's much more complicated than that, but if Sasuke could create a storm with just one fire jutsu, why not? Looking at the bank of computer monitors in front of him, Naruto saw that the clones had made a thorough inventory of everything they had. They had been freed from Konoha and had already started building something he had wanted to build since his father had shown him what they had previously built. The fact that Naruto was actually a very good planner was something that many people were unaware of. He just typically had impulsive motivations and little time for planning. However, he was able to think of creative ways to accomplish his goals. For instance, it took 6 months to plan the painting of the Hokage monument in addition to pulling off a dozen smaller pranks to obtain supplies and allay everyone's suspicions about his true prank. Perhaps it will be told at some point. It's a good story. A voice said, "You should get some sleep." From across the bay, Naruto turned to see Herbert Landon, his half-mutated uncle, approaching him and saying, "You've had a long day." "Yeah," Naruto replied, "but I want to finish this before I go to sleep. What about you? I thought everybody had gone into sleep mode for the night." Naruto blushed slightly, and Landon chuckled at his response. "The Kingpin asked me to do some programming for him, and once I finished that I got to thinking about your girl problems, the one with the split personality, not the ones who made out with you. That's your own problem. I don't think we can completely purge the foreign DNA from her, but maybe we can take it and use it to make her stronger." Naruto questioned, "What are you talking about?" "Back on our world there was a device called the Neogenic Recombinator. The gizmo that turned Gargan into the Scorpion." "Correct. I see you picked up some of Gargan's jargon. But I thought it was destroyed and there weren't any blueprints." "There weren't, but shortly before the launch we were able to find Dr. Farley Stillwell and scan his mind to find the designs." "Can we build one here? We have or can manufacture most of the parts, but there are some things we will need to find elsewhere." "All right, give me a list and I'll get on it." "I will tomorrow. Right now you should get some sleep. Give me a few more minutes to finish this. You have 10. Naruto grinned and said, "Yes sir." He was relieved to have someone nearby who was concerned about his welfare. Many of Suna's surviving shinobi gathered at a prearranged rendezvous point, exhausted and wounded from their abortive invasion. Many of them questioned whether they would ever see their homes again and whether Konoha's shinobi were hiding in the bushes. A red-eyed veteran Jonin, who was always assessing their health and the extent of Suna's military recovery, examined each one closely as it arrived. Families and friends in Suna eagerly awaited updates on the Konoha battle, particularly how their loved ones in Cage fared. In Iwa, Onoki the third Tsuchikage, also called the fence-sitter or Onoki of both scales, and a feared master of the Jinten or dust technique, reflected on his country's position in the world, including its military might, economic standing, reputation among wealthy customers, and the efficiency of both of their Jinchuriken, Han, who was constantly patrolling the village's walls, and Roshi, who was located far outside. "All right. I'm lying." The elderly man was actually farting while he slept in his bed following a dose of painkillers for his ailing back. "You see, this is what we refer to as filler. Everything else will probably pay off later, but this won't." The leader of Kiri's rebellion, Sao, lay in his bed and looked around his Spartan quarters with a satisfied sigh. Since the war had been going on for months, all of the astute soldiers were aware that it was dangerous to leave too many personal belongings lying around in case of an attack. But the woman encircling him was all that mattered to him. Since they first met, she had essentially thrown herself at him, but he didn't give a damn. Even for a ninja, they had accomplished feats he didn't believe were physically feasible, and each and every one of them was her idea. Some of them he had never even heard of. With her soulful green eyes fixed on him, his partner said, "Someone's having good thoughts about you and what you said earlier." "What I said earlier," she repeated. "Was that before the 3rd time or after the 7th time?" She teased as she began using her finger to trace patterns on his chest. "You're right. Your cell shouldn't be placed on the front lines. I'll move Nai's squad, and you, Shojiro, and the rest of your cell can defend the supply depot." "May, that's what you suggested your cell should do before all of that." May Terumi purred, "How can I ever thank you," and planted a kiss on his chest. And started to say, "You don't," but May interrupted, creeping down his body, kissing and talking, saying, "You know, I think I can think of a few ways." May was so appreciative that and gasped, "This sure as hell beats reading reports." But the news that there might be a new Kekai Genkai in Konoha really infuriated the muscular Cage, who scowled as he read the secret report his agents sent about the Chunin exams. They had failed to find anyone with a Kekai Genkai that they could easily kidnap and bring back to Kumo, except for an Aburame kid. But their clan is creepy. Some Uzumaki or former Uzumaki, if the change in last name was any indication, had the ability to form metal on him in the form of tentacles and wings. Damn Konoha, accursed, like they need another batch of ninjas with special abilities, especially if they found a way to implant abilities into them. Tayuya moaned as a hand applied pressure to her curse seal, which was just as painful and sensitive as it had been when Orochimaru first put it on her. "All right," she complained. Imachi, the scientist who oversees Orochimaru's underwater research, looked over her shoulder and said, "This is fascinating. The skin around the seal is red from some sort of irritation, but the seal itself looks fine, except for the color." "What is the issue with the hue?" Tayuya inquired. "It looks like something black that's had a lot of dust on it or faded black cloth, Amachi said. I've never seen it on the curse seal before, but it could be a form of chakra exhaustion. I'm not an expert on it, of course, but I'm your guy if you want to become a man-fish hybrid. You're physically fine, but I would suggest having Lord Orochimaru examine it shortly. Go get some sleep. With a sort of, okay, grunt, Tayuya left the examination table and walked out of the infirmary, where she saw Jirobo leaning against the wall. Why are you in this place? She inquired. Waiting for you, Jirobo replied, straightening up. I'm not sleeping with you, wasn't looking for that, I was just worried about you. Blondie took a lot out of me, Tayuya said as she began to make her way to her quarters down the hall, but I'm fine, just tired. You must be exhausted, Jirobo said, because you're not cursing as much as you usually do. Tayuya deadpanned, I'm too tired to bitch, you bastard, adding, and since when do you give a damn about how I feel? Remember how hard Kimimaro pushed us? It's too much trouble integrating a new member of Sound 4. When they arrived at his door, Jirobo stopped and said, Guy killed 3 candidates just because he thought they weren't being respectful enough to Orochimaru. Night, Tayuya. Glad to see you acting more ladylike. Tayuya didn't respond and simply continued walking. Jirobo went into his quarters, changed, got into bed, and fell asleep almost immediately. A tiny glowing ball of light drifted down from the outside world inside his seal, think dark room, and fell languidly until it barely touched the ground. Suddenly, a massive form emerged from the shadows, engulfing the ball and swallowing it in an instant, its eyes glowing yellow and snake-like for a brief moment before closing again as the form laughed or hissed. Tayuya slipped into her room, got dressed, got into bed, and dozed off while pondering the same question she had been asking herself for weeks. What happened to you, Kin? The room was completely dark, save for a speck of light that illuminated a small patch of the floor and a piece of what appeared to be shredded snakeskin inside her seal. Another dark room. A small glowing ball of light drifted down from the outside world and landed softly on the ground. Thwack. The garden hoe struck the snake that had attempted to enter the inn with a satisfying whack, crushing its skull. Disgusting creature, the elderly woman holding the hoe thought to herself before picking it up and tossing it into the trash can. She grinned to herself as she replaced the hoe and went back to work as the Hilltop Inn's landlady, eager to tally her earnings for the day. The only oddity was the 2 gentlemen who had checked in hours earlier. One was pretty handsome from what little she could see, and the other, well, just looked strange. All the rooms were full, which was not surprising given that the Chunin exam was in Konoha this time and the inn was on one of the main roads that ran between the hidden village and several major tourist cities. A breeze blew through the open window, cooling her for a moment before she returned to work, but, she thought, the straw hats and black cloaks with red clouds looked nice. If only those Akatsuchi or whoever Jiraiya asked her to watch out for would wear some easily identifiable uniform, but then again, that would just be silly. Hiruzen complained, damn, your hands are cold. How can a hand covered in medical chakra be cold? Watuo, Hiruzen's personal physician and head of the medical division, joked, it's an old medical technique for patients you find annoying, as he removed his hand from Sarutobi's chest, especially the ones who should have come to you far sooner than 8 hours after a major battle. Sarutobi said, you had more important things to do. Wa sighed, everyone in Konoha would say I should have seen to you first, and only you would say that, and they would be correct. You shouldn't have used the jutsu. Teaching it was prohibited for a reason. The only methods I could think of to permanently stop him were that and the Shikifujin. How am I, then? Well, physically you're fine except for the damage to your lungs from smoking. Which I have taken your medicines for, interjected the elderly Hokage. All right, but I'm afraid I can't repair the harm done to your chakra and your body's capacity to produce it. I have some seals in my office that should lessen the effects of your chakra's destruction, so you're lucky it was in the hand. How much time do I have? I would estimate that you had 10 to 15 years prior to today. It is now 3 years, 10 if you're lucky, and you have completely stopped using chakra. Wa sighed once more before sadly stating, I'm sorry Hiruzen, I wish there was more I could do. Of course, the more you use chakra, the faster it'll kill you. The old Hokage said softly, thank you, my friend. I think you should go home now and make sure your family is okay. Wa nodded, packed his medical supplies, and departed. The room fell silent for a short while as Hiruzen took everything in, and then he spoke again. I assume you heard everything? The second dumbest thing I've ever done, Jiraiya said, standing there with a somber expression as a corner of the room rippled. Sensei, please stop holding yourself responsible for Orochimaru's behavior. Hiruzen concluded, letting the first person who mistreated Naruto live as the dumbest thing I've ever done. All in all, it's the third stupidest thing I've done. Jiraiya's eyes grew wide at the peace-loving god of shinobi's statement. I have to know. I need to retire. The elderly man sighed. I should have personally ripped them limb from limb. Jiraiya. The Toad Sage cut in. Oh, no, I shouldn't be Hokage. You're right, I'm not asking you to be Hokage. Besides, the first thing you'd do is make the mandatory kunoichi uniform a Seitho bra, thong and a smile. Jiraiya acknowledged. Well, perhaps silk stockings and a garter belt for special occasions. How did you know? Both men briefly burst out laughing when Hiruzen said, I read your yearly requests for the uniform change. Jiraiya, I have a mission for you. Please locate Tsunade and return her to Konoha. The official goal is for her to begin her medic nin program and help heal our wounded. And informally, and officially, you are bringing her back to eventually become Hokage? Should I tell her this? Hiruzen sighed and said, you better. If we spring it on her here, she may wreck the place. Both men laughed at the idea of the blonde woman losing her temper. Jiraiya asked, in the event that she declines to be Hokage, what should I do? Don't worry about convincing her to be Hokage, just convince her to come back to Konoha and I'll worry about the rest. Okay. Anything more? Yes, this mission has an additional unofficial objective. I'm sending Naruto with you. Making him stop hating you is your goal. What? Shocked, Jiraiya asked. Jiraiya, Naruto despises you, is relieved that his contract with the Toads is no longer in effect, and believes you attempted to kill him twice on purpose. This is your opportunity to make amends. I'm not sure what you were thinking. Ah, the Gaki is simply perplexed. He will most likely begin pleading with me to be his sensei once more after spending a short time with the gallant Jiraiya. Jiraiya bragged. Before wondering what his surrogate grandson was doing, Sarutobi looked at his student with a mixture of sadness and disbelief. For your sake, I hope you're right, he said. Naruto was just finishing the inventory when he heard a tiny whimper of fear and a whispered voice say, Big brother. The storm raged overhead, lightning split the sky, and the rain tried to wash away the tragedies of the invasion. Thunder rumbled again, loud enough to actually shake the ship. Naruto glanced away from the inventory monitor and saw Kin's brainwave monitor. She had regained consciousness without the system noticing, and it seemed that her brainwaves had changed once more. Naruto approached her cautiously and gave the nearby Octobot the signal to get ready. Hey, is anyone there? She called again, sounding timid and childlike. With caution, she raised her head and saw Naruto. Hello, Naruto said. My name is Naruto. What's yours? She whispered back, Tobarama Senju. Are you also a Senju? I'm not allowed to speak to non-Senjus, according to Tu-san. I'm an Octavius Smythe, but I used to be an Uzumaki, Naruto said. Is that sufficient? Kin nodded her head and grinned. Tu-san says that Uzumaki are okay. Where is my brother and where am I? This is my house, and I don't know where your brother is. When thunder erupted once more, Tobarama's eyes grew wide with terror before she began to tremble. In an attempt to channel the old man, Naruto said, It's okay, adding, I'm right here. I won't let the storm hurt you. A pledge? I swear on my Nindo, Naruto replied, appreciating Tobarama's willingness to put his trust in him. How about I tell you a story until you go to sleep? With an enthusiastic nod, Tobarama moved his chair next to her bed, coffin, and said, I'll tell you about the time I saved Wave Country. Does it contain any monsters? She inquired. Naruto replied, just one, but he was a good demon. Before he began his tale, it waited in the dark, waiting for another opening, another opportunity to be free, after a piece had previously escaped. The Hokage himself, his hand-picked advisors, in this case, his former teammates, the heads of various departments like Anbu or the hospital, and a few non-clan affiliated shinobi elected by their peers made up the final section of the Council of Konoha. The first section was made up of the various clans that founded or migrated to the village over the years, such as the Hyuga and the Aburame. The second was an elected body of civilians who, in spite of the Hokage. Sarutobi glanced around at the council members gathered, and it was clear who was a shinobi and who wasn't. The shinobi were all obviously exhausted, and many of them had bandages on, while the civilians appeared fine on the outside but were clearly shocked because few, if any, of them had ever witnessed the effects of war, much less been in the midst of one. Sarutobi yelled, I call this emergency council session to order, cutting off all discussion. Ibiki Morino, you are in command of the wall, report. A large three-headed snake was summoned outside wall section 13 at around 2:15, the scarred proctor from the first exam said as he stood up to address the council. After destroying the guard tower, the snake entered the village and headed toward the town center before being stopped by a toad that Lord Jiraiya had summoned and a number of what turned out to be clones of Genin Uzumaki. The majority of the enemy's forces were positioned to exploit the opening, but our forces were able to repel multiple attempts to breach the walls at other points. Reassembling and restoring the wall and tower to their full strength is expected to take several weeks, according to our engineers. Very well, Sarutobi said in response. Naruto, is there anything you'd like to add? My clones had succeeded in defeating the center head and were about to finish off the other two when the Sannin interfered by summoning his toad and killing off several of my clones also. I go by Naruto Octavius Smythe now. Naruto said with authority. There were several people eyeing Naruto's tentacles with the same eagerness that Orochimaru had. While we are on the subject of Uzumaki, one of the older civilians started, we would like to know where he received his new abilities and when we can expect them to become available to our shinobi forces. Where I received my technology is none of your concern, Naruto said. As for sharing it, I have no intention of allowing it to fall into anyone's hands. Now see here, exclaimed a woman with an especially high-pitched voice. Our forces need that technology. All of the ninjas in the room, both active and retired, turned to face Naruto when he asked, why? Do you doubt their skill? No. No. The woman exclaimed in panic as everyone stared at her. Naruto asked in a conversational tone, then you doubt their abilities? The woman repeated, even more frantically, no, no, as she felt the stares staring at her. Then you have no faith in them to protect you? The strain caused the woman's voice to break. No, it's not. An older man with half of his face bandaged said, what our esteemed council member is trying to say is that Konoha could be even stronger and more prosperous with young Naruto's devices. Even if I felt the need to share, I lack the resources to produce additional units and the procedure is dangerous. I'm sure we could provide you with any materials and volunteers you may need, the man with the bandages said. And will you provide me with corpse removal as well? Replied Naruto. Because I can assure you that the odds for survival are low. I barely survived it and I had inside help as you all know, so unless you have a few dozen extra ninja you wouldn't mind losing, I suggest you forget about it. Then you shall have to practice. On what? Cadavers? Konoha has many prisoners, especially now. Perhaps we could take some of our captured enemies and death row inmates. Enough! Yelled Sarutobi. The last ninja who experimented on human beings in our village just ran away after Naruto here helped defeat his armies. Would you like to join him, Danzo? Danzo remained silent. I didn't think so. As far as Naruto's technology is concerned, that is Naruto's to do with as he sees fit, although I will ask you to share what you could to help our own technology improve. Naruto said, okay, and Sarutobi heard the unsaid, old man. And as for Naruto himself, I am putting forward my personal recommendation for Naruto Uzu. Excuse me, Octavius Smythe to be promoted to Chunin immediately. After a brief period of silence, the council was shocked, with many members expressing their disapproval. Well then let me rephrase that, per my decree backed by his performance both in exam and on the battlefield. Sarutobi continued, I am giving Naruto Octavius Smythe a battlefield promotion to the rank of Chunin with all of the rights and privileges thereof. Congratulations. Thank you, sir, Naruto replied solemnly, averting the irate civilians' gazes. Do I have to wear the vest? Sarutobi replied, only in times of war, and then he turned back to the council. He interrupted anyone who wanted to join them, saying, given the council's current emotional state, I'm going to order a half-hour recess so everyone can calm down while I discuss some matters with Naruto in private. Meeting is in recess. Sarutobi hurried Naruto into his office after escorting him out of the chambers. Somehow, I think having you and the council in the same room is going to lead to nothing but headaches. I have a mission for you that will probably take a while. Sure thing, old man, but don't I have to give my report to the council and rub it in their faces how awesome I am? No, just make some clones to write down what happened and I'll just have somebody I don't like read it into record. Oh, that is evil, Naruto chuckled. I think I like you more than ever. So are shadow clones how you get through all of your paperwork. It was the first time around, but then the Yondaime screwed it up. What happened? Inquired Naruto, intrigued that the fourth Hokage, whom the Hokage people had practically elevated to the status of a saint, was being insulted. He made a dozen clones and took off for a date. When he came back, 11 of his clones were passed out drunk after cleaning out all of the tower's booze. And the 12th? That one went mad, both angry and crazy. He wrote and released several laws that the council eagerly approved. Like lowering the standards at the academy, gave a tax break to the rich, which in turn meant out ninjas had to go on more dangerous missions, and most annoying of all, he gave the council more power. And the ninja population didn't lynch him because he also approved of the creation of several ninja-only businesses, and it's only when you know how a village is supposed to be run do you know what will screw it up anyway. When he came back he swore he would never let it happen again, so he banned using clones for legislative paperwork. That doesn't explain why the laws weren't revoked. Oh, it's because a couple of days later he did the one thing that would ensure nobody could ever be able to change things back. Sarutobi sighed. What? He died, and since he did it by sacrificing himself, somehow the people decided those last documents were what he really felt were needed by Konoha, and to undo that was the worst thing ever. Sarutobi chuckled when Naruto said, I don't think I want to be Hokage anymore. It's not as much fun as it was first time around, but there are perks. Like, Sarutobi took out a picture of a blonde woman from his desk drawer and handed it to Naruto, saying, I want you to go out and find me this woman. Naruto gazed at her for a few seconds before answering, isn't there an easier way of getting a date? We'll discuss it later. It's not for a date, she's Tsunade Senju, Slug Sanin, granddaughter of the Shodai. First, Hokage and one of my students, Sarutobi clarified. Naruto questioned, so I'm bringing her back to boost morale? In part, she's also one of, if not the best medic in the world. With all of our injured, we need her medical expertise. So am I on my own, or will I have a team? With hesitation, Sarutobi said, you have a partner. Naruto questioned suspiciously, who is it? Jiraiya. Sarutobi thought Naruto would blow up, but to his credit, the blonde inhaled deeply, exhaled, and asked, why? She's very good at avoiding being found. His connections and personal knowledge of her makes him the only one who can track her. And I'm needed because? There are so many ways I could justify it. I could tell you that it's policy on retrieval missions, or he'll need the extra security or manpower, or just because you're that damn awesome, but those would be lies. Except the last one, Naruto said. Except the last one, Sarutobi replied. But the truth is I need you two to be able to work together. If our positions were reversed, how would you react if I asked you to work with Orochimaru? I'd probably explode, insult you and your intelligence, and refuse to do it. So why shouldn't I do the same thing? For a brief moment, Naruto remained silent. He knew that the two of them had a connection, but neither had ever spoken. You have every reason to never want to see him again, and I wouldn't blame you, but I want the two of you to at least get along. He's my student, and I've always seen you as like a grandson to me. All right, but I have two conditions. One, unless it has to do directly with the mission, I want him to leave me alone. All I can do is promise that I'll tell him to do that. I don't know if he'll obey. That leads to two. This mission is a three-man mission, and I get to pick the third member. I'll agree to that as long as they agree. You bring them here so I can make it official, and the person you choose is within reason. Can I pick you? Sarutobi smiled and said, Kami knows I'd love to go on a mission again. Unfortunately, the village would fall apart without me, and I've got to leave a village for you to run someday. Naruto laughed and said, all right, then I better come up with somebody else. They talked about the short list of people Naruto would want to go with him, and before he returned to the council meeting, Sarutobi gave his grandson in all but blood a pass to see his candidates. Even in secure areas, he left an office of Naruto clones to fill out reports on what he did during the invasion, all several hundred copies of him. 99% of Konoha residents would give you an incorrect response if you asked where Anbu headquarters was located, such as beneath the Hokage Tower, in the Forest of Death, beneath one of the numerous abandoned buildings in the village, or beneath the falling Cherry Blossom Strip Club. The reason for the last one is most likely that the club has a stripper who begins in full Anbu gear and gradually removes it until she is only wearing a mask. No one seems to mind because no one is observing her face, even though the club serves both sexes. There's a guy on the women's side who does the exact same thing, and the women aren't complaining because they're too busy ogling his chocolate-covered abs. Bachelorette parties pay the club a lot of money to do that, so it's not hyperbole. I'll wait, since you're probably enjoying the mental pictures you've conjured up from the descriptions and don't care that I'm babbling. Completed. Alright, let's move on. In actuality, only the Anbu, former Anbu, and the Hokage were aware of Anbu headquarters, or at least the area where all Anbu would congregate. The items that people believed to be Tharia prison cells, high security vaults, etc. were dispersed throughout the village to maintain as much anonymity as possible and to make it difficult for anyone who managed to break out of a cell to quickly obtain anything crucial on their way out. Sarutobi had shown Naruto the location of one of the prison blocks, which was, of all places, beneath a pet store. It was for inmates who were high enough in status to merit segregation from the others, but not so dangerous as to require the highest security. His target was occupied with one of the more difficult cases, an Auto Nin who did not react to any of the genjutsu applied to him, did not break under the standard torture, and did not even blink when they reached the most brutal parts. We're talking about the weird, butt stuff, and it's really brutal. They had brought in an expert to try and do whatever was required to obtain information because all of that had failed through a one-way mirror. Naruto observed his invasion partner growing irritated with her victim and essentially ignoring her behavior. Naruto had an idea when he suddenly recalled seeing her target close to the ramen stand. He had become entangled in the fight between his clones and the Ichiraku's would-be assailants. The guard watching Naruto approach the door to the interrogation chamber yelled, Hey, you can't go in there. The guard was supposed to be recording the interrogation. Naruto responded, I don't think Anko will mind, and opened the door with his tentacles. Both residents' eyes widened, one in shock and the other in terror, as they turned to see a metal claw on the end of a tentacle opening the door. When he walked into the room, the blonde at the other end of the tentacle said, Hello Anko, with a smile. How are you? Fine, Anko replied, still taken aback by his presence. The prisoner sat motionless, watching the tentacles move like snakes, seemingly looking around the room. The special Jonin questioned, What are you doing here? Naruto responded, I'm not allowed to see my favorite kunoichi? Favorite? The prisoner mentally recited it, barely conscious of anything other than the claws that had turned to gaze at him and pierce his very being. Naruto approached Anko and brought the claws closer to the prisoner, allowing him to see the weapons that had attacked him the day before. I was thinking about taking you out to lunch. Interested? Naruto asked. Are they becoming sharper, sweet Kami? As the ends appeared to change from faux fingers to sharpened knives, the prisoner thought. Anko responded, I can't, I'm busy interrogating this guy, observing the prisoner's response as perspiration started to trickle from his head. Anko nodded in response, and if he told you everything he knew you could leave? Naruto looked over at the prisoner as his claws had attacked his squad. The Auto Nin had seen the blonde's face a dozen times in one sitting. The claws shook and scolded him, saying, Hello, I'm Naruto. I think we met yesterday. Now I want to take my good friend Anko out to eat, but she can't because you aren't answering her questions. Why not? Don't you know it's impolite to ignore a beautiful woman who's talking to you? He asked as the claws drew nearer and he could hear the machinery clicking and spinning once more. The captive, who dared not look away from the blonde, could hear the evil machines creeping around him as the tentacles slowly extended around him. But then again, maybe you're just shy, that's fine, but you don't have to worry. Anko stood next to the blonde and put an arm around him while putting one of his normal arms around her, emphasizing Naruto's statement, because we're all friends here. The prisoner felt a puff of air as the claw near his ear snapped shut, and he snapped his resolve. And you're going to tell your new friends everything we want to know, right? He asked. As she and Naruto strolled down the street, Anko asked, What did you do to him yesterday? Ignoring the people who would glare at each other or who had begun to stare at Naruto in wonder. He looked like he was going to pee his pants. I thought he did, Naruto replied, or at least he smelled like he did. The two chuckled until they arrived at Ichiraku Ramen, which Naruto believes to be the greatest restaurant in Konoha, if not the entire world. When they heard Naruto enter, the Ichirakus who were tinkering with the stove looked up and grinned. Tucci simply grinned, and Ayame, delighted to see Naruto, ran over to give him a hug. Naruto greeted Ayame and gave her a hug in return. Hey old man, what's the special today? He asked. Nothing right now, Tucci replied, returning to the stove, because I haven't figured out how to fix the burners that aren't working. Have you called for a repairman? Adding a tone of disbelief to the word damage, Tucci responded, yes, but he can't come over until all of the damage to the other restaurants are fixed. I've seen the ones they talked about and there's nothing wrong with them. They just say they've been damaged to tie up repairmen from going to the competition and cash in on the insurance. It's the same crap they pulled after the Kyuubi at AK. Tucci with D-reaction and withdrefaction. Ayame yelled, Dad, as she hurried back to him. Are you okay? Yeah, it just stings, Naruto said. Let me take a look at this, as he approached the stove. Anko and Ayame both warned, be careful, which made both girls look at each other and wonder why the other girl had also said it. Don't worry, Naruto assured them. I've had a lot of training in electronics recently, he said, and his newly formed tentacles started to probe around. As well as the most advanced diagnostic equipment, he said. His lower right tentacle reached out to touch some of the exposed wiring and was clearly shocked, causing it to jerk back in shock, sway as if dizzy, and fall to the ground. Naruto concluded by saying, and I've got number 6 for the dangerous stuff. Looks like there's something wrong with all of the burners. I think you'll need a new one. Hearing that, Tucci sighed and said, I was afraid of that. Stoves aren't cheap. Naruto said, so do you need some money? No, we don't want charity. Naruto pulled out a big wad of bills and responded, what charity? You're two of my precious people. This is just paying you back for everything you've done for me. Will this cover the new stove? And then some, Tucci said, gazing at the pile of books. Where'd you get that? Ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies. Naruto, said Ayame in a straightforward manner. It's not stolen if that's what you're worried about, Naruto replied. Technically correct. I placed a wager on me defeating Neji in the opening round, Tucci said, his eyes brightening. I obviously bet on you to win. I just need to track down the bookie and pick him up. You placed a wager on me? Naruto inquired. Why wouldn't we invest in our preferred client? One of his tentacles tapped Naruto on the shoulder and gestured back toward the stove before he could respond. Everyone looked at the stove where the three tentacles had put it back together, saying, "Oh hey, looks like my friends have fixed it up. They cannibalized one of the burners and wiring, so you'll only have 3 left, but it should last for a while before you have to completely replace it." Excellent. Between that and the money from the bet, we'll be fine. We don't need your money, Naruto. Tough, it's yours. I don't want it. But Naruto, Ayame started. But nothing, Naruto said. Having me as a regular customer couldn't have been good for business, so this is yours to do with as you please. Buy something nice for your home. Get some more padding for the stools. Fund Ayame's trip to try food around the elemental nations. Whatever you want. You remembered, Ayame said, astonished and moved. It's important to you. Of course I'd remember. Now one special and whatever Anko wants. Then Anko said, pork ramen. Tucci joyfully reiterated, 1 Naruto special coming right up and 1 pork ramen for Miss Mitarashi. Naruto inquired, what's a Naruto special? We'll find out. A huge bowl of noodles, 3 types of meat, and 6 different add-ins turned out to be a Naruto special. After some time, Anko and Naruto completed their lunches and started to make their way back to the interrogation room. Well, if that's how you treat your precious people, how'd I join the group? Asked Anko. Actually, that's part of the reason I asked you to lunch. You mean it's not because I'm super sexy and your favorite kunoichi? Anko grumbled. Those were just bonuses. I need your help with something. Something fun? Maybe, if we're lucky, something with blood? Maybe if you're lucky. Well, now I'm interested. What's the job? I'm going on a mission with the toad. The white-haired perverted one? Anko interrupted. That's the one. We're going to find his female teammate and I need a 3rd member for the team. Don't you have teammates you could ask? Only in name? Shouldn't you ask somebody you know and trust? I trust you, was Naruto's sincere response. Why? Why wouldn't I? We worked together once. And we worked together great. Naruto stopped moving, took Anko's hand, and shook it, stopping her as well. We barely know each other. Hello. My name is Naruto Octavius Smythe. I like my precious people like the old man, the Ichirakus, Uruka and you. I also like ramen and flying. I dislike waiting for ramen to cook. Being teammates with idiots, toads, perverts and spiders a little bit. My dream is to find more precious people. Any questions? I still don't know why you want me. I need somebody to watch my back. What about Kakashi? He might be able to fight, but I doubt he would to protect me. Protect you from what? From the toad? What? He's tried to kill me in the past. I'm certain he'll try again in the future. Why? Who knows? Revenge for the 4th. Belief that I was a threat to the village, or maybe he's just jealous of my good looks. Anko laughed at the last one before adding, sounds about right. Naruto said, so are you in? I wish, but I've got more prisoners to interrogate. So after you've made all of the cannon fodder spill their guts and empty their bowels, then can you go? As Naruto executed the renowned Koinu no Mijutsu, puppy eyes technique, his eyes widened. Wella. Anko laughed, it only works if you're young and cute. Are you saying I'm not cute? Naruto asked. No, you're handsome. There's a big difference. So will you protect a handsome man from a jealous old toad? All right, after the interrogations, if the Hokage approves, I will go with you. Great, you want help? Anko said, you want to help me? Sure, it'll give me an excuse to be around you more, besides you haven't told me about yourself yet. What do you want to know? Everything. Anko looped her arm through Naruto's, and the 2 new partners left for the prison. As he prepared his belongings for the mission the following day, Naruto thought to himself, well, this has been a full day. He and Anko had spent 2 hours going through the dozen men she had left to question. It took Anko 30 minutes, a cactus, a feather duster, and a sock puppet to get the final one to speak, while Naruto had to enter the room a few times with his tentacles swaying to frighten a few others. Anko had broken the majority of them in 5 minutes simply by talking to them while playing with a kunai. The Hokage had continued the council meeting while Naruto was away, talking about the damages, what needed to be rebuilt first, how to strengthen defense so that this wouldn't happen again, how to counterattack, whether it would be feasible to invade Suna in retaliation, who the hell sang, who let the Ninken out, and, most amusingly for Sarutobi, his secretary reading the reports that the Naruto clones were recording. As Sarutobi read the 10th report the mechanized blonde's clones had written, she thought angrily, that'll teach her to screw up my breakfast order. This report described how he had prevented a team from blowing up the hospital, but in the process, the enemy ninjas had destroyed one of the council members' hardware stores. With meeting done, Sarutobi had eagerly returned to his office to get away from his old teammates and the rest of the esteemed council. Naruto and Anko approved her addition to the team in a matter of minutes. Soon after, the two parted ways. Anko informed Ibiki that she would be leaving and packing, while Naruto went back to his apartment to retrieve the personal belongings he couldn't live without, mostly the dog Nightcappa, and sneak back to his new real home, a spaceship that had landed at the bottom of a canyon. From that point on, he started organizing his affairs, packing for the journey, discussing with his family what new skills they should acquire in the limited time allotted, the status of the various projects' construction, and above all the well-being of his visitors. Status, said Naruto. Well, aside from the missing parts, I should have the recombinator assembled before you return, Landon said. I meant with them, Naruto interrupted. Oh, the male is unconscious with no indication of recovering anytime soon, although we have the occasional glitch in the sensor readings that we haven't been able to lock down that obscures reading for a few seconds. The female hasn't changed, or rather she regained consciousness, briefly screaming obscenities at somebody named Homura to quote, catch the demon cat Tora, end quote, but we were able to put her to sleep again quickly, Landon clarified. Why does she keep changing? I believe that the jutsu intended to turn her into this Tobirama Senju. When it was interrupted, she had the memories of Tobirama Senju dumped in her head without overwriting her own memories. This has overwhelmed her mind, which is trying to make sense of it all by loading both sets of memories. One set ends up dominate. Sometimes it's her natural memories and it succeeds, but other times it ends up load Tobirama's memories and something causes it to stop somewhere along the line and she'll start living his life from the point her mind has loaded. Unfortunately, this is causing her body to tear itself apart faster. Vader, Naruto said, could we use your neuro-augmentation ray to draw Tobirama's memories from her brain? It could be done, said Otto, but it wouldn't be a clean removal. It would be like trying to scoop goldfish blindfolded and only trying to catch ones of a certain color. It would be easier to try and remove all of her memories, then separate the two sets and return her memories to her. Isn't that a bit invasive? Yeah, but considering the mess her mind's in, it would be an improvement. Several monitors lit up. She's coming around again, Landon announced. Octavius questioned, but which one is she? Naruto questioned, why does she keep walking up? We've been using short-term sedatives since we didn't know what we were going to do with her, replied Landon. Kin's voice yelled, Naruto? The blonde rushed to join her. Kin. You remember me? Naruto asked. She groggily said, yeah, what's happening? Why can't I focus? Your mind keeps trying to load Tobirama's memories instead of yours and it keeps failing. When I stopped Orochimaru's jutsu, I had no idea the backlash it would cause. Your body and mind are divided and it's my fault. Not your fault, Kin clarified, snake bastards. I'm trying to fix it, but I need time. If I'm right, you might end up stronger than before. I just need time to finish building the machine and time to remove the other set of memories. Kin inquired, will it hurt? It shouldn't, but it will take a long time? How long? Weeks. I need to get special parts and there's a lot of memories to sort out. Will I be awake? It's too dangerous. When you're awake, your body is pulling itself apart. I'm going to give you a long-term sedative and wake you when it's all over. Will you stay with me? I can't. I have to go far to retrieve what I'm looking for, but you'll have the best care I can get you. Kin asked, slowly closing and opening her eyes. Then stay until I fall asleep. Can you tell me a story? A story? Like the one you told me about Wave? Okay, Naruto said in a startled and quiet voice. This is the story of how I fought Tora. Damn demon cat, mumbled Kin drowsily. Yeah, Naruto answered before telling the story of how the cat nearly cut his teammates in half before he saved them, oblivious to the conversation some of his family members were having. How would she remember Naruto telling the child Tobirama a story? Landon inquired. Maybe Tobirama's new memories aren't merging with his old ones and are being given to Kim. That's why she isn't so hostile. She remembers him comforting her, Otto responded. The Kingpin said softly, then this is perfect, as he approached the two scientists who were observing the blonde from a distance. Naruto will need allies that he can trust outside of the ship, and this girl trusts him. But we need to increase the level of trust. Otto, can you find a way to change her memories so Naruto shows up in favorable moments? Otto growled angrily, you want me to rewrite her memories? You did it to Spider-Man, the Kingpin retorted. I gave him amnesia and tricked my enemy into believing he was my ally. I did not take a girl who isn't even old enough to be an adult in our world and change her past to suit my whims. I will not do it. And what will you say if she leaves and tells others where we are and leads them back here? That won't happen. How do you know? Naruto said. I have faith in Naruto convincing her to say nothing, and turned to leave. Octavius is a fool, said the Kingpin. You don't trust Naruto? Landon asked. I do, replied the Kingpin, but I'd rather have a backup just in case. You never know when it could become handy. Landon said, I understand, and returned to keeping an eye on Kin. Kin eventually dozed off, and Naruto completed his setup the next day. Naruto, Anko, and Jiraiya left to go find Tsunade. We'll learn more about them in the upcoming chapter. Let's continue to observe the situation in Konoha for the time being, though. Days later, the Hokage himself presided over a funeral for those who had perished during the invasion in remembrance of their sacrifice. The afternoon would alter the future, while the morning paid respect to the past. Startled to see his sensei waiting for him, Sasuke asked, "You beat me here?" He then turned to face the stand where he and Kakashi were meeting. "I don't like natto or sweet things," Sasuke grumbled. "Typically when somebody takes you out for a free meal, you don't complain about the location," Kakashi replied. Sasuke followed his sensei's instructions. "Come on, sit down and have a couple sticks of dango and tea." "Good, now I wanted to talk about some concerns I've been having about you." "Like what?" "I'm worried that you've become too focused on revenge." Sasuke cut him off. "I need to keep training and get stronger." "Yes, but if you push yourself too hard, then you run the risk that you are going to burn yourself out or worse, cause serious damage to yourself and end your career. Then who will avenge the Uchiha?" Sasuke was simply staring at Kakashi. "I'm not asking you to stop entirely, just take a few days off. You got hit very hard and had a concussion. You need to rest, sleep in late, spend some time enjoying life." Before Kakashi could reply, Sasuke stood up and hurried away, saying, "You don't understand. How can I rest knowing the one who killed everybody I cared about is alive and out there running free?" Kakashi said, "That could have gone better," as he turned to face Asuma and Kurenai at their seating arrangement. "I'll give him some time to cool off. I better go see my other student." "Tell Sakura, hello, for us," Kurenai instructed. "I haven't had a chance to speak to Naruto yet," Kakashi explained, before reflecting, "Not for a while actually, not since I took Sasuke to train for the Chunin exams. I've seen her already. She took my advice and is resting until her ribs completely heal. It might be a while before he comes back," Asuma said. "Who knows when he and Jiraiya will get back." "What? When did they go?" "A couple days ago. Naruto's is my student and just a genin. Why wasn't I informed?" Kurenai replied, "Because he isn't a genin anymore." The two men gave her a startled look and said, "Anko told me, she's on the mission too." "Naruto received a promotion?" Kakashi pondered. "And he kept it from me? However, this is Naruto, and I would have heard him shouting about it throughout Konoha if he had been promoted. Why was I not discovered by Naruto? How come he didn't come tell me? Or did I overlook his attempt? No, I wouldn't disregard him, would I?" The appearance of an Anbu jolted Kakashi out of his reverie. "Kakashi, Lord Hokage has sent me to bring you to him immediately," the Anbu stated. Kakashi put money on the table to pay his bill and said, "All right, let's go." The masked pair vanished in a mass of leaves and then resurfaced in their leader's office a short while later. "Kakashi as ordered, sir," the Anbu stated. Sarutobi said, "Very good, dismissed," and the ninja in the animal mask bowed before leaving. "You summoned me, Lord Hokage?" Kakashi cried. "Yes, we have received reports of bandits attacking the convoy carrying the taxes from the northern cities. The daimyo has requested we send somebody to eliminate them. You depart tomorrow." "Is that all, sir?" "Yes, dismissed." "What about Naruto?" "What about him? Why wasn't I informed about his promotion? For that matter, why was he promoted? He has shown potential, but not enough of the traits that make for a good Chunin." "I disagree. During the battle he displayed more than enough forethought, adaptability, and leadership to qualify as a Chunin, and on top of that at least 2/3 of all of our captures can be directly credited to him, and that's not including his actions when he stopped Gaara's rampage, saved his teammates, fought Orochimaru and his guards, and saved my butt. If that doesn't qualify him, I don't know what does." Sarutobi responded with a tone that was almost conversational. "Naruto did all that." Kakashi responded, "He did all of that and he didn't find me and tell me why?" Sarutobi's response, "That's between the two of you," startled Kakashi, who had not been aware that he was speaking out loud. "But from what I've heard, your teaching style leaves much to be desired." "Sir? That is between you and your students," Sarutobi responded, "but for now focus on your mission. We need you out there impressing clients." "Yes, Lord Hokage," Kakashi replied, still preoccupied. Before heading out after reviewing all of his memories of training his team that evening, Kakashi reached the same conclusion as before. He didn't push Sakura hard enough. Sasuke pushed himself too hard in an attempt to match the image he had created of Itachi, and Naruto had talent but a terrible grasp of the fundamentals, which is why he attempted to have Ebisu train Naruto. What was the issue that everyone was discussing? However, there were other Sharingan users who were currently lost in the past besides Kakashi. Itachi Uchiha thought to himself, this is too easy. Since the two Akatsuki members had sneaked into the village, Itachi's partner had refused his offer to buy them tea at the White Lotus, which is well known for Uncle Iroh's evil tea, so they parted ways to expedite their search. He had been looking for a few personal belongings he had left behind the night he was forced to kill his clan, but he had found nothing hours earlier and was now in his family's house. For the first time in years, he let his guard down when he saw his old house looked exactly like he had left it years before. Itachi cursed Konoha and the Uchiha clan for creating the whole mess, as well as himself for doing it. Itachi didn't notice the door opening because he was so overcome with emotion. Itachi. Until it was too late, Sasuke was already hurling shuriken at him after spotting him. They fell harmlessly to the ground after Itachi deflected them. Then, in order to stop his younger brother from doing more damage to the family home, he charged at him and knocked him out of the open door. Itachi got back up and moved away from his brother by rolling with the tackle. What are you doing here, Itachi? Sasuke asked his betrayed sibling as he swiftly stood back up and began to regain composure. Itachi partially lied when he said, I came to check on you, little brother, to see how much your hatred has grown. Sasuke lost all self-control and attacked Itachi once more. Sasuke became even more enraged when the elder Uchiha effortlessly avoided or blocked all of his brother's blows without retaliating. So he leapt back and began the hand sign sequence Kakashi had taught him, which ended with his hand covered in lightning chakra. Chidori was Sasuke's jutsu name as he charged forward. Sasuke was forced to halt in his tracks and lock Sharingans with Itachi after Itachi stood there idly, waiting until the very last second to step aside and grab his arm. Itachi mockingly remarked, foolish little brother, before striking Sasuke with the Tsukuyomi. The ultimate genjutsu of the Uchiha clan. Sasuke had to relive the deaths of everyone he loved at the hands of the person he most likely loved for the next 3 days inside and 3 seconds outside. After it was over, Sasuke passed out or collapsed due to the stress, saddened by his brother's actions and a little irate that Sasuke wasn't yet strong enough to beat him. Itachi looked down at him when he saw another black cloak with red clouds. He turned his head. Itachi's partner said, it seems our target has left on a mission. Should we go after him now? Itachi picked up his unconscious brother and actually put him in bed, saying, no, the guards are more alert at night. We'll stay here tonight and leave in the morning, Itachi said. It will be easier to get past them undetected. After that, he left his partner in the guest room and went back to his old, surprisingly clean room, packed, and slept in his old bed for the first time in years. An hour after sunrise, the two Akatsuki members departed Konoha, leaving the village unaware of their presence. When Kakashi entered Sasuke's home a few hours later, he grinned to see his pupil seemingly staying up late. Kakashi thought to himself, looks like Sasuke actually took my advice. Silently, he left the room and informed Sasuke that Kakashi would be embarking on a protracted mission. Happy that his fellow Sharingan wielder had heeded his advice, the Jonin departed the house. It appears that Sasuke is screwed. Friends, who's worried about him? Show of hands. I can't see you, so why am I asking? Fun fact. If Kisame hadn't become thirsty, Kakashi and Sasuke would never have suffered any injuries. Look it up, please. The Jonin at the tea shop saw the two of them because the Shark Man wanted a drink. Whoever recognizes my references to Naruto the abridged series and Avatar the Last Airbender, not Little Karibo's version, will receive bonus points. The following time, we start the arc I have planned, Tsunade Rising, in which our heroes go in search of the Slug Sannin and I start to resolve what I consider to be one of the most puzzling moments in the canon. You'll just have to wait and speculate on the poll that ought to appear on my profile when someone passes away. Have a happy time until the next time, for however long you choose. By the way, could someone please let me know if trying to be factually correct matters or not? Because of things like the time the snake broke through the wall, I've been causing trouble. Should I do this or can I skip it? In any case, this omake features Danzo, everyone's favorite evil old man. Journal entry 1 on Naruto Road. 3 days have passed since Anko and I left Konoha with the Toad in order to locate his former teammate. If this were a manga, we could skip these parts and go directly to the town where she was staying. We might even spend a few minutes elsewhere for fun, but this is real life, and we have to take our time. I promise that if I only had a loaf of bread, a rock, and a monkey, I could find Tsunade more easily. Anko is the best part of this mission, so of course I would want her there as well. In any case, how would our much hyped Toad Sage, great elite, and mastermind of the greatest spy network ever approach finding his teammate? Let all of his spies know who he was pursuing and instruct them to report her if they see her. B. Lead us to his teammate's most likely location using his intimate personal knowledge of her. C. Call forth a toad that might be able to communicate with her summons and use them to locate her. You'd be mistaken if you selected any of the options above. I will acknowledge that there is a possibility that he did one or more of these things without my knowledge, but those chances are equal to the likelihood that I would return to Konoha, track down Choji, and make love to him until I am 6 months along with our third child. By the way, I don't think that of Choji. He's nice, but that's no chance. I'm not sure why so many people don't realize that men are incapable of becoming pregnant. Whatever the case, I'm not kidding when I say that the Toadman stated, quote, I will use my super pervert senses to lock onto the largest breasts in the elemental nations and track them. I had to inquire, and the world's largest breasts belong to Tsunade? Yep. Great. Our village was attacked and we're on a quest to find a pair of saggy old woman boobs, Enko said. Truly, this is the most important mission in the history of the entire world, I said in a tone that matched hers. The joke's on you too. Tsunade has mastered a technique that leaves her looking just as beautiful as the day we met. Her chest is as firm as ever, her hair, Jiraiya said. I asked the aggressive violet vixen I was partnering with, you want to keep going? Sure. The pervert will catch up. We left the Toadman behind to gaze off into space and use flowery language to describe his teammate. Unfortunately, perhaps he had a crush on her or something, but I don't really care. Jiraiya was ranting, so we cut him off for the first time, but it wouldn't be the last. On our walks, Enko and I have had a lot of fun conversations. On occasion, we would discuss the people we saw on the road, such as some old hippies we had never seen before, or we would discuss music, movies, manga we had been reading, or anything else two friends would discuss. Additionally, Enko would try to fluster me by flirting with me or doing these small things during every conversation. After saying that I was happy she was there to watch my back, Enko suddenly jumped on my back to watch it better. I did the only sensible thing when a gorgeous woman was on my back. I carried her for a while, and I must admit that my back never felt colder after she got off. The Toad is undoubtedly the worst teammate I could have asked for, but she is unquestionably the best. His foolish plan to find Tsunade has already been discussed, but his general demeanor irritates me. He pretends that I'm still meant to be his apprentice and that he did nothing wrong. Why would I want to collaborate with someone who has attempted to murder me? Twice, for instance. We camped for the night a few nights into our mission. Naruto, you've had a long enough break, it's time for us to get back to your training, Jiraiya said. I inquired, what training? Summoning toads, of course, and the first step is for you to resign the toad contract and reinforce your connection with them. You mean re-establish, replied I. The old man told me how the connection was severed after you first tried to kill me. I wasn't trying to kill you, that was part of your training, he attempted to clarify. Training? I responded with disdain. What sort of training involves telling someone, if you don't want to die, figure it out yourself, and then showing them of a cliff? Enko, have you ever had to do something like that? No, said Enko, astonishingly quietly, but it sounds like something my old sensei would do. I'm still not sure who she was referring to, but it appeared that Jiraiya took the comparison personally and avoided me for the remainder of the evening. Journal entry 2 for Naruto Road. The Toad has been attempting to persuade me to sign again, so it appears that he has recovered from our conversation. He hasn't stopped talking about how amazing the toads are and how nothing can compare to them. They're the largest of all summons and have many abilities. The Toad went on to explain. Did you see how minor one stopped that three-headed snake? No, as I recall, I stopped that snake myself and I was then crushed by a giant toad that landed on the snake, a task that could have been accomplished by any large enough rock, I replied. But can a rock shoot out water or oil? Can your rock carry you hundreds of miles or fight a biju? Replied Jiraiya. Probably not, but the rock's loyalty would be to me. Plus, toads don't have any natural offensive abilities, no claws or teeth to fight with. What am I supposed to hope that they can slap their enemies away with their tongue, or if the toad gets eaten then poison would get into the enemy's body? And you talk about going long distances, yeah, all of that is hopping, going up and down, that's definitely how I want to travel, motion sick and flopping around. But most importantly, the toads are your summons. Anything I tell them, they would probably turn around and tell you so for the last time. No, I have no interest in summoning your toads, and with that I left. Journal entry 3 on Naruto Road. Today, I saw a cloud that resembled one of my nanites exactly. I just found it interesting, but it doesn't really mean anything. I've also been lucky enough to be able to create a private clone in the last few days so that I can continue working on my most recent project, which should soon be operational. The events listed below occur at Ningyuan Pass during the Second Shinobi World War. It was a remote spot on the Suna side of a pass between the borders of the Land of Wind and the Land of Stone, in a desolate and lifeless region of the world that was useless outside of times of conflict. If nothing else, both sides sent their least popular or weakest shinobi to fight there in order to get rid of them. Up until now, Both sides had been content to raid any supply convoys they could find or kill any patrols they could find outside the other base. The Tsuchikage then began dispatching additional troops to the pass after realizing its significance. Unlike the small squads or lone ninja that could currently sneak across the borders, Iwa would have an opening large enough to send dozens of ninja through at once if the base fell. For this reason, before Suna could respond, the Tsuchikage had dispatched team after team to the base. The scene could only be described as chaotic. The Iwa and Suna ninjas were engaged in a fierce battle for control of the base, with one shinobi possessing the Yatun, lava bloodline, and another who had reportedly made a deal with the Rhinoceros clan. Suna's 4 teams were outnumbered 2-1 before breaking through the outer wall. The summoned Rhino had charged through the canyon pass, setting off and demolishing the majority of the traps. A few Iwa nin had been surprised by the few traps that remained, but one Yatun, Shikuburia, Gon no Jutsu, lava release, scorching stream rock technique, destroyed the traps and killed the Suna nin in charge of them. The numbers were somewhat evened out when Iwa nin poured through the hole and into areas that were too small or too close for the Rhinoceros summon to enter, but big enough to use puppets. The two sides engaged in back and forth combat, with the ninjas' luck in spotting opportunities to strike and kill rather than their skill. The 3 remaining members of Suna's army were Kiri, their medic nin, Kurobi, a genin puppeteer and his only surviving puppet, and Changwan Yuan, a recently promoted Chunin. 10 Iwa nin who were still alive surrounded the command center, forcing all 3 of them back inside. Changwan asked, "Status?" But he already knew the majority of the answer. With a mixture of dread and fear, Kurobi said, "Our friends are dead, the walls breached, the enemy is inside and surrounding us, we're pretty much out of weapons and food. And we're missing as the kunai twirls, and today was the day Rei was going to confront Asuka over her trying to ruin Rei's wedding to Shinji," Kiri concluded. "Which sucks because it should be a great catfight. Besides, Shinji and Rei deserve to be together." "Are you crazy? It should be Asuka and Shinji getting married. Rei stole him from her." "Stole him? What are you talking about? They broke up after Asuka." "Guys, impending doom here." Changwan cut him off. "Sorry," the 2 show fans said in response. "I doubt I was out there talking about some show." In the meantime, outside, as he caught his breath, one Iwa nin exclaimed, "I wish the Suikage had postponed this mission for a dia. I wanted to see Asuka and Rei's catfight." The lava user went on to say, "Yeah, the old man just doesn't understand free time." Changwan inquired, "What do we have for weapons?" "Ourselves. A few kunai and shuriken apiece, my chakra scalpels, and what's left of Kurobi's puppet," replied the medic nin. "A senbon launcher with a few poison packs and a flamethrower," Kurobi stated. For a short while, Changwan gazed at a nearby kerosene lamp. An idea came to him as he began reviewing their circumstances and the surroundings. It was a flashback to his genin days, when his team had worked harbor security alongside a team from Kirigakure. Changwan asked the medic nin, "Don't you have any chakra pills on you?" Reaching into his pocket, Kiri took out a couple. Changwan snatched one and consumed it. "Come on, I've got an idea. If they aren't out in 10 seconds, melt the door down and kill them," the Iwa force leader said as he prepared his men outside the building. His second-in-command yelled, "Sir, on the roof." The leader glanced up just in time to witness 8 identical clones of a defender jump off the roof in the direction of the invaders. The clones popped feet away and soaked the attackers after the Iwa nin collectively threw shuriken into them. The second-in-command said, "I've seen everything now. A Suna ninja that uses Mizu Bushin, water clones." The commander's eyes widened in realization as a smell filled his nostrils. The door flew open, revealing half of a Suna war puppet spewing flames that lit up his stunned comrades like kindling. "It's not water," he said. "It's kerosene." The person who created the clones threw fireballs, causing more fire to fly. Distracted by the fire, the Suna defenders killed many of Iwa's surviving ninja, leaving only 2 seriously injured men who had to retreat under the Rhino's cover. Changwan knew they would return soon after glancing at the fleeing enemy. "We need to start repairs," he commanded. "Get ready to protect the base again." "With what?" inquired Kurobi. "All of our stationary traps are gone. Our teammates are dead, and there's a hole in the wall." Changwan pointed to the remains of one of their teammates' puppets and said, "What about the puppets? Can you fix them?" "The damage to them is too extensive. Most of them are wrecked beyond repair." "Can you scavenge them then? Take a usable arm off of one and put it onto another puppet body?" "No," Kurobi replied. "Our puppets are individually crafted and meant to work in their own unique ways. It would be like training all of your life to fight with a sword and your sword is taken away and replaced with a nunchuck. I could probably use the remains of my other puppet to fix this one, but past that it can't be done." What about making a new puppet by finding parts that could work together? It would be like make a human, and some of the body parts you have to work with are from kids or animals. Kurobi clarified his choice of simile caused both of his teammates to stare at him. Kiri said, "That's just wrong. Besides the fact that animal parts would be wholly incompatible, the various immune systems would constantly attack each other unless the patient was heavily drugged, plus add in the incompatibility in the chakra systems. The patient would never be a ninja based on that alone unless you could keep one of the patient's chakra systems intact and thread it through the remaining parts, then you could." Kurobi questioned, "Are you really trying to figure out how to do it?" They began arguing, but Changwon ignored them, focusing instead on an Iwa shinobi whose throat he had severed early in the battle when an idea struck him. "Kurobi," Changwon said, breaking up the debate, "how do you control your puppets?" "I use chakra strings and attach them to the puppet on various points and control its actions by moving my fingers." "Can you move other things like you would a puppet?" "Depends on how conductive the object is to chakra. The wood the puppets are made from is routinely exposed to chakra-laced water, so it would be easier to work with, and the metal has at least one section of chakra-conductive metal to attach a string to. So as long as whatever you use can conduct chakra, you can control it?" "Yes." Changwon pointed to the deceased shinobi and said, "What about that?" "That's a human being." Changwon corrected, "That's a corpse. Could you control it?" His two teammates suddenly understood what he was doing. "It's not right, not right. What exactly is right about this whole damn situation? Is our being stuck out here instead of being with our families right? Is them attacking us right? Is killing them right? Is watching our comrades die at their hands right? Tell me, what is right?" Kiri retorted, "Is it right to do something morally wrong?" Kurobi simply raised his hand toward the corpse without saying anything. "They will return, in greater numbers, knowing we are weak. If we can't stop them, then everyone we know will be in danger. If keeping our country safe means I have to do the morally wrong thing, then I will." Nothing happened for a few seconds before the bodies slowly started to rise like something from a scary movie. Kurobi said in a voice that was a mixture of horror and grief, "Looks like I can." "All right. Here's the plan, Kurobi. Repair your puppets as best as you can and scavenge as much as you can from the battlefield. We'll need all the extra kunai and shuriken as we can get. Kiri, gather the dead and seal ours to send home with their dead. Treat them enough so that we don't have to worry about a limb coming off, and if you can't treat them, then just leave them outside the walls to scare and enrage our enemies." "And what will you be doing?" "I'm going to head to the communication room and send messages out to every nearby post for help. When that's done, I'm going to repair the wall and repair or build as many traps as I can so we don't have to rely on our new puppets," Changwon said, and then dashed to the communication. Finally, reinforcements showed up 2 weeks later. They discovered that the base was being attacked, but before they could intervene, they saw a number of bodies rise up and attack the invading force, forcing them to retreat. The fact that some of their shinobi had successfully repelled dozens of the strongest Iwa and survived to tell the story is all that most people would know about the Battle of Ningyuan Pass. Journal entry 4 for Naruto Road. After a week, the Toad is now bribing me and bringing up my past aspirations to get me to work with him once more. "Look, kid, Sarutobi-sensei told me about your dream. You want to become Hokage. It's a big dream, but you're in luck. I'm probably the best guy in Konoha that you could have train you. I was a student of the third Hokage, who was a student to the first two Hokage, and I personally taught the fourth Hokage, perhaps the best Hokage of them all. That's gotta mean something to you." "Yeah, it means you couldn't hack it as Hokage," I responded. "No, it means that I know what it takes to be Hokage and I can help you become it. Plus, if you're lucky, I could teach you the signature jutsu of your hero," I said. "And that would be?" "The Rasengan," exclaimed Jiraiya with pride. "Who's the Rasengan?" "The Rasengan isn't a who, it's the jutsu, the signature jutsu of the fourth Hokage." "Oh," I answered. "Oh," Jiraiya replied, "that's all you can say? I thought you'd be bouncing off the walls to learn your hero's signature jutsu." "I have new heroes now," I replied, "so why should I care about this Rasen thingy?" The Toad drew his right hand back, and a spinning ball of chakra appeared in it. "Besides being the fourth signature jutsu," Jiraiya said, his voice growing irritated, "it is the pinnacle of jutsu creation, as it requires no hand signs like so." He made a perfect hole in a nearby tree by slamming the ball into it with his forward-facing hand. Looking at the damage, Enko was stunned. "Well, what do you think about that?" I tried to sound as unimpressed as possible as I asked, "So you can put holes in trees, what else does it do?" "When this baby's complete, then you'll see what it can really do," Jiraiya gushed. "What's it missing?" "What? You said when it's complete, what more is supposed to be done to it?" "When an elemental affinity is added to it, you should see what it does." "Okay, show me." "What now?" inquired Jiraiya. "Yeah, why not?" Because it's too dangerous to just throw around and show off to ungrateful brats. When I add my element to it, forests tremble, mountains quake, and the world itself shakes in fear. Jiraiya exclaimed. I'll take the risk. I cannot risk the world to appease your whims. You have no idea how to add an element to it, do you? Well, so if you can't do the ultimate jutsu, why should I bother learning it from you? I mean, judging solely by what you've done here, this move is only effective at putting holes in things, so really it's just an overhyped punch. The Toad Ninja's eyes narrowed and, you better not disrespect the jutsu my student created. I punched the same tree he had and created a hole in it that was as big as Jiraiya's. I'm not disrespecting it. I'm saying I don't need it. I've already got moves to do the same thing, I said, activating the gauntlet on my right arm. Like this. Not bad, kid, Jiraiya acknowledged, but still nowhere as good as the Rasengan. But can it do other things like change size or be used at a distance? No. Can yours? I demonstrated a long-range air blast by striking a dead tree next to the white-haired pervert. Can't change size, although that might be something to look into, but I can use mine at a distance. Before it hit the tree, the air whipped his hair around as it went by. The tree toppled over and fell with a crash, groaning and creaking before he schooled his features. Jiraiya's eyes were probably wide with shock, even though he was turning his back on me. He said, "Is that all?" "No," I replied, switching the gauntlets to energy mode and unleashing a blast that pierced a boulder through. I can make holes at a distance too. Come on, Anko, let's see if we can make it to a town tonight. As I began to walk down the street, Anko hurried to catch up to me, leaving the toad to assess the damage I had caused. "Was that a good idea to show him all of that?" replied Anko. "I just showed him stuff I've already done in public. He probably knew about it already. Besides, I've got some new tricks I haven't used yet." "Such as?" she inquired. I said, "You'll see." When I refused, Anko pouted. Journal entry 5 for Naruto Road. We eventually arrived in Shukuba town, which is well known for having a large number of brothels. Yes, I am aware that the toad led us to a town with 3 brothels per block, which is shocking for a man of his moral character. After checking us into a hotel, the toad informed us that there were only 2 rooms available. A single room and a room with 2 beds. Following his initial suggestion about who slept where, Anko kicked him in the groin. If I hadn't done something smart that night after the toad had left to see a woman named Emmy or something, I wouldn't have been listening to his second suggestion, which would have had me sharing a room with him. I rapped on Anko's door. After a few seconds, she opened it, and I saw that she had been changing. "Hi," I said, "weird question, but are you going to use your bathtub tonight?" "I've already used it," she said, "but if you want to take a bath in it, go ahead." "Actually, I wanted to sleep in it tonight." "What?" "I don't trust Jiraiya. I'm certain he would try to pull something on me while I'm sleeping." Anko noted, "He hasn't done anything so far, but that's because we were either close to Konoha or you've been close by. He probably doesn't want to risk fighting both of us at once." "Okay, but are you sure you want to sleep in my bathtub?" Anko moved aside to let me in, saying, "I've slept in worse spots, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Before I let you sleep in my tub, I want to know something." "Okay. Does it hurt?" "Does what hurt?" "When you cover one of your arms in metal or grow an extra arm out of your back, does it hurt?" she asked, and I paused to consider my response before releasing my tentacles for the visual effect. It's not a pleasant feeling, but I've actually gotten used to it. All I feel now is a stream of metal that pours out and covers or forms whatever's needed. They're machines, right? So are you always in control of them, or can you tell them to run on their own? Well, for the most part, one send them orders with my mind and they follow them. Like my flesh arms, the big difference is sometimes they've got minds of their own. "I noticed," Anko said, gesturing to his lower right arm that was protruding beneath the bed. "Number 6, I said irritably, "is my most untamed arm and typically the one I have to control." Number 6 emerged from beneath the bed, clutching some yellow panties. "Yours?" "Not mine," I gave the order, "put it back, I don't want to know where it came from." Number 6 complied, then stretched to wash itself in the bathroom. "If that's what's under the bed, I don't think I want to sleep on it. I'd be better off sleeping on the wall." "On the wall?" "One of my old sensei's training exercises was to stick to a wall with chakra overnight and you had to sleep for part of it." "Sounds intense, although it makes me wonder," I said as I moved to the corner, pushed chakra into each claw to adhere to the wall, and extended 2 of my tentacles high up each wall. Then, with the claws still attached, I stood up and supported myself with my tentacles. I eventually managed to lay down comfortably. After some trial and error, Anko came over and looked at my setup, saying, "Looks like I've got a hammock." Before I could reply, Anko sat on me and turned to lie down. "It looks very nice, but I better test it out," she said. "Yes, very nice. I think I'll stay here tonight." Anko? I said, yes, she said almost purringly. Get off, I believe I stammered out a reply along the lines of, most men aren't usually worried about whether the woman gets off, you're definitely a keeper. My mind froze, and the next thing I knew, Anko was back on her bed, grinning broadly, most likely at my expense. Just as I opened my mouth to speak with her, there was an unexpected knock on the door. There were two men in black robes. When I opened the door after giving me a look, one of the men said, "You need to come with us." Just as Naruto opened his mouth to speak to Anko, there was an unexpected knock on the door. There were two men in black robes. When he opened the door, "You need to come with us," one of the men said, glancing at him. "What?" I inquired, perplexed by the man's seemingly inebriated tone. "Come on, Koji," yelled the other, who was also visibly intoxicated, "it's time to party." I answered, "I'm not Koji, not Koji, where's Koji?" "I don't know," the first man laughed and yelled, "but this is his room. It says right on the door 69. When he saw the number, my eyes shifted from the men to the number, and then I said, "That says 12, your friend's not in here." The second man exclaimed, "Oh, so, do you want to party instead of Koji?" I replied, "You two have fun without me." The first man exclaimed, "Okay, we will. Bye, not Koji." And the two staggered down the hall to locate their friend. After observing them for a short while, I closed the door. That was weird. Journal entry number 6 on Naruto Road. Anko and I went to bed after my episode with the inebriated duo, with me hanging off the walls and her in the bed, which was surprisingly cozy. The following morning, the two of us explored the town while searching for Tsunade and taking in the sights. When Anko wasn't looking, I managed to create a few clones and sent them out to do the tasks I couldn't, such as searching for recombinator parts. One didn't want to talk to Anko about why I was going into a jewelry store to buy a giant diamond, which is much harder than you'd think, but I felt bad about doing this behind her back. Sadly, we eventually encountered the Toadman, who smelled like cheap perfume, perspiration, and Shamiya. I'm assuming not his own because, let's be honest, his lifestyle and manner of introducing himself make it pretty obvious he lacks shame. "Oh good, I found you two. I've been thinking about it, and as leader of our team I need to take on more responsibility, namely the financial responsibility. As leader, I'm ordering you to hand over your wallet, Naruto." Jiraiya clarified. When the man I detested the most in the world made a request, I did the only thing I could. I took out my wallet and gave it to him eagerly. The toad removed the cash and returned the empty wallet to me. He ran off joyfully toward one of the town's many brothels, saying, "Great, now I'm really close to finding Tsunade, but it's going to take some time, so the two of you just wait and I'll find you again." Anko questioned, "Why did you do that? He didn't have any right to take your money." "I know," replied I. "Are you hungry? There's a stand over there that's selling something called a taco, and I'm curious to try it. Are you buying?" "Sure, and how are you paying for it?" I simply took out my wallet without saying anything. Unless the stand works on the barter system, I was planning on using money. "So you gave him some of your money to go away?" I replied, "Nope." "Then what just happened?" After eating tacos, the two of us strolled through the town, saying, "I'll tell you later. It wasn't nearly as good as ramen, but it was still decent. Can I convince the Ichiraku family to make ramen with a taco flavor? Is it even possible to make ramen with a taco flavor?" The day was rather uneventful. The only noteworthy events were a loud howl of pain that shook the town a few minutes later and the man sobbing that night as Anko passed the room where the toad was staying. Anko entered our room and asked me, "Why is Jiraiya crying in his room?" I said, "Nightly ritual. Maybe it helps him cope with how sad and pathetic he truly is." Anko said, "Naruto, what did you do? You know that wad of cash I gave him? It wasn't real?" "Wasn't real, counterfeit? Did you make counterfeit money?" replied Anko. "Naruto, you could get into real trouble for that." Without putting the pieces together, Anko looked at me and said, "I didn't make the money, I copied the money." Anko's eyes widened, or more precisely, I cloned the money and then specialized what it would take to end the technique. Her lips began to smile. "Specifically, the next time somebody else touched the money it would go poof," she said, holding back her laughter, "and since the first person he ran into was a member of the world's oldest profession." She doubled over, refusing to laugh aloud. "Jiraiya probably tried to pay a whore for sex and the money vanished as soon as she touched it." Anko asked aloud, still laughing, "I wonder if that's what Tsunade does to get out of debt." "What?" Anko clarified, "Oh yeah, she's known as the legendary sucker." "Do I want to know how she got that nickname? She's a terrible gambler and always in debt to the casinos or the people who pay off her casino debts for her. If she's that bad off, maybe we should save some time and lay a trail of bills on the road and hope follow them back to Konoha." I suggested. Anko chuckled, and after a few more hours of conversation, we dozed off. Journal entry 7 on Naruto Road. I need to watch what I eat before bed because I had the most bizarre dream last night. I fought a tree and then a rabbit, lady thing. The following morning, the three of us left town early, probably so Jiraiya could leave town without anyone noticing. Regretfully, some people continued to whisper to one another as soon as they spotted the toad Anko, and I heard that during Twins Night, Jiraiya attempted to pass off my clone money at Miss Rangaku's pleasure palace. That infuriated Miss Rangaku, who forbade Jiraiya from entering any of her 200 palaces. Life is good now that the biggest chain of whorehouses in the elemental nation has banned the world's greatest pervert. Changwan Yuan surveyed the war room. He had recently been promoted to Tokubetsu Yanin due to his actions at the Ningyuan Pass months prior, which had given him access to these high-level meetings pertaining to Suna's war effort. Suna was winning the war against the Iwa. The tide had shifted in favor of Suna following the Battle of Ningyuan Pass. At their end of the pass, Suna's army had attacked and swiftly taken control of Iwa's base. Suna had sent a huge force through this gap in Iwa's defensive line, forcing them to go on full defensive for months. They were continuously pushed back until they had lost a significant portion of their southern border. For this meeting, Yuan and a few other Yanin were summoned back to Sanagakure. The meeting was called because the Sandame Kazekage, Suna's greatest ninja ever and the master of the Iron Sand, had just returned from a call to the capital a few days prior. As you all know, the Kazekage explained, the war has been going on for several years now and the daimyos are getting tired of it. You have all heard the rumors that our daimyo has been meeting with the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Since this rumor had been going on for years, the gathered ninjas nodded their heads. I'm here to tell you that it is now true. The daimyos of Wind and Fire met several days ago to draw up a peace treaty. I won't bore you with all 50 pages of it, but the gist of it states that we're at peace now and we can no longer enter the Land of Fire or rivers without permission. The Kazekage paused to allow his group of ninjas to consider the implications of that. Although the battle with Konoha had been intense, it had been much less frequent and fatal than the conflict with Iwa. If two of the hidden villages in this three-way conflict could reach an agreement, the third would have no chance. Lord Kazekage, Tanaka, a tall red-haired Yanin, began, if we are no longer going to move toward fighting Konoha, then wouldn't it be worth it to move as many of our troops as possible toward the north now in preparation for a massive attack on Iwa or to annex land from AIM? The Kazekage questioned, why would we want to take land from AIM? What value is land to a hidden village? The water would make it worth our effort. AIM has frequent rainstorms and massive lakes. If the water could be collected and brought into the Land of Wind, or more importantly Suna, it would ease our nation's drought. By watering our crops and feeding our people, it would be more than worth the effort to strike. Tanaka clarified. The honored siblings, Shio and Ebizo, were among the ninja in the room who nodded their heads in agreement. The Kazekage said, I see. Does anybody have any other ideas? After a brief period of silence, Yuan broke the silence. All eyes turned to Yuan, who said, with all due respect, I think attacking AIM at this point would be the worst thing we could do. Hearing the wisdom in his words, several of the ninja in the room nodded their heads in agreement. For all intents and purposes, we were winning the war with Konoha. All conflicts were on their side of the borders of the Land of Rivers, and our losses were much smaller than in the conflict with Iwa and about the same as the losses we know they suffered. If our daimyo was willing to end the war we were winning, it seems likely he will end the war we are fighting to a draw. As the Kazekage put it, so if the daimyo will end the war soon, what would you have us do? At the moment, the Land of Wind is larger than it's ever been. If we focus our forces on defense, protecting what has been won, then the daimyo would be negotiating from a position of power, and thus our enemies would be willing to give us more to end it peacefully. Yuan elaborated. Plus, we are regarded as the finest trapmakers in the world. If we focus on defense, we can trap our enemies and whittle them down in relative safety until the treaty is signed. Yes, safety, Shio replied sarcastically. We can hide from the world while our enemies get stronger and prepare to attack us. Lord Kazekage, I have fought Hansa several times. I know how he fights, how he thinks, the strengths and weaknesses of his men, his summons, and himself. We can beat him. Yuan retorted, how sure can you be? All you know is what Hansa has let you see, and if we are being honest, with Hansa's power he could have probably destroyed you at any time. After all, he has a reputation for sparing people on whims. Unlike you, I did not achieve my rank by being lucky enough to scare off weak-minded Iwa shinobi, Shio said sternly. I earned my reputation by constantly fighting and surviving, just like a proper shinobi of Suna. Proper shinobi of Suna know when to fight and when to let their enemies exhaust themselves in the desert, the creed of the Shodai Kazekage, the man who founded our village. Tanaka retorted, and the first would be the first to agree. We need to expand now. The third Kazekage looked at the three of them and said, enough. All of you have made excellent points. He was thinking aloud, as evidenced by the small amount of iron sand that accumulated in his left hand and started to change shape in between sentences. The survival of Suna is paramount. The best thing we can do to survive is hold what we have until the daimyo makes peace. But we have no idea when that will be, and playing defense will give our enemies time to rally and find a hole in our defenses and overrun us. Yet, if we are too aggressive, the other nations will see us as the aggressor in this war and seek to stop us, as they will have the moral imperative to stop the bully nation that isn't them. On the other hand, the more territory we win for the land of wind, the greater our standing with the daimyo and the more impressed the minor lords will be with our nation. The shape of a kunai, Chiyo, Ebizo, Tanaka. I want you three to start drawing up battle plans for an invasion of AIM. I want maximum gains as quickly and using as few shinobi as possible. I want the plans on my desk in 3 hours. The rest of you prepare to be sent north to either defend against Iwa or attack AIM. That is all. 10,000 shinobi departed Sanagakure 3 days later. 2 days later, Hanza and AIM's 2,000-strong defensive force was attacked by Tanaka's 8,000-strong offensive force. Only 1,200 of those 8,000 would survive to return home. Many of their shinobi careers had ended. The abrupt arrival of shinobi from Konoha led by the Sandame's students, who likewise failed to defeat Hanza but were rewarded with the title of Sanin, was the only reason any of them survived. The following day, a force of 5,000 Iwa shinobi attacked the defensive force of 2,000 Yuan. The initial attacks were repelled by their forward defensive positions, but they were eventually overrun. Only 700 of those 2,000 would make it home safely. The sudden appearance of a group claiming to be Ishigakure shinobi who were fed up with Iwa's oppression was the only thing keeping them from being totally overrun. Suna lost most of the territory it had gained during the war to the north as a result of the final attack, which cost it a third of its entire military forces. The Second Shinobi World War came to an end 2 days later when the daimyos of Earth, Wind, and Fire convened to finalize the peace treaty between their countries. The land of Wind would eventually grow a little bit, but it lost the majority of the land it had gained during the conflict. The land that Iwa had recently reclaimed from Suna was used to establish the nation of Ishigakure, Land of Rocks, which served as a border state between Wind and Earth. Yuan made multiple attempts to suggest ways to close the Suna force gap to the Third Kazekage in the years following the Second Shinobi World War, but Lady Chiyo and Tanaka consistently rebutted his suggestions. Lord Kazekage, income from our clients has dropped. I believe that it would be in our best interests to begin courting more of the minor lords of the nations surrounding us to support ourselves, Yuan put forward. That's foolish. If the daimyo finds out we are talking with other nations, then he may begin to cut our funding, replied Lady Chiyo. The daimyo has already begun to have Konoha take on several missions for him, Yuan clarified. If he's doing that, then maybe we should start finding more clients. It's not worth the time and effort it would take to court these minor lords who are already using their nation's minor shinobi villages to work for them to come before them. Asking them to hire us would only lower our worth on the world stage, Tanaka stated condescendingly. The Third Kazekage concurred, saying, I must agree with the counselors. Suna cannot afford to look weak now. Lord Kazekage, I have found an unaffiliated minor clan who are still wandering the elemental nations. The Ma clan. Their numbers would greatly ease the strain on our manpower. Ebiza retorted, but is it worth the security risk? To bring in so many outsiders at once? To even bring in outsiders at all? Suna is still prospering with the splendid ninja it has. We do not need to rely on outsiders who might corrupt and weaken our forces. Then have them work in our less important tasks for now, or test them to see how strong they are, Yuan retorted. A wandering clan after all these years sounds too suspicious, Lady Chiyo said. How can we be sure they aren't spies or worse, missing nin? Would you have the wrath of the other elemental nations brought down on our heads because you wanted us to take in their criminals? The Third Kazekage concurred, saying, I must agree with the counselors. Suna cannot afford to bring in outsiders now. Journal entry 8 for Naruto Road. As soon as we got to Tanzaku town, we divided up to explore the area. Split up. I say Jiraiya went one way, and Anko and I went the other. The castle. There was a pleasant place for the two of us to explore. The only oddity I noticed was a cute black-haired girl wearing a black kimono and carrying a pig. It must be a local issue. The toad eventually discovered us and determined that we should check into an inn before sharing a meal. Author's note. I apologize for interrupting, but I had to tell you that I'm going back to third-person narration. This is primarily because I wrote this scene a long time ago and I like it, and writing it in first person takes away some of its qualities. One of the least expensive restaurants in town, Jiraiya's Choice, catered to 3 types of patrons. Those who couldn't afford to eat anywhere else, those who were more interested in the alcohol than the food, and those who simply wanted to avoid attention. To be honest, Jiraiya ought to have found Tsunade here first. Jiraiya whispered to himself, The one time I wasn't looking for her, but the others could hear him, he yelled, Heiheim. To get the attention of Tsunade, her apprentice, and everyone else in the bar aside from the cook, who was occupied with preventing the dinner special from escaping, the toad sage swiftly sat across from his female teammates and ordered a variety of appetizers for the table, exclaiming, I've finally found you. That's Tsunade, then? I'm positive I've seen her partner somewhere before, but she's really 50. What a phony, Naruto thought. Jiraiya said, You look amazing, Heim, what's up? Really, nothing. What are you doing? What do you want from me? What happened to her? This is really bothering me, Naruto pondered. When Shizune learned that Konoha was offering to make Tsunade's dream, her eyes widened, and Tsunade's eyes narrowed in suspicion. Sensei sent me to bring you back to Konoha to help the village recover and start your medic nin program. Offering me what I desired years ago when it could have benefited hundreds of people is excellent. Why are you actually here now? Jiraiya sighed and said, I had hoped that would be all you needed to come back. His food caused everyone's eyes to widen in complete shock. Sensei asked me to find you so that you could come back and become the Godem Hokage. Naruto thought, Godem Hokage? Where the hell did that come from? You dumb thing. Stay in there. The silence was broken by the cook's shout. All right, Tsunade? Do you agree? Jiraiya questioned his old teammate. I apologize. Jiraiya laughed when Tsunade said, No thanks. That line reminds me of I recall that you had previously used it when I asked you out. All right, what's happening? You spent hours and hours describing the shape of her ass, and you couldn't take 5 seconds to tell us you were going to ask her this? Naruto demanded, gesturing to Jiraiya. Who is this brat? Jiraiya. Tsunade inquired. Naruto Uzumaki, Jiraiya replied. Naruto clarified, Octavius Smythe. Hey Jiraiya, unlike your last disciple, this kid's got worse mouth, brains, and even mug, Tsunade said after thinking, so this lad has the Kyuubi. Come on. The fourth Hokage is so much more powerful than everyone else. In addition to his innate talent, he was amazing because of everything I taught him. Still not gonna be your student, Naruto informed him. However, despite all of that, he passed away at a young age, giving his life to save the village despite their efforts to put an end to global conflict. My grandfather and his brother died in vain for the village and achieved nothing like Sarutobi will one day. They became Hokage and then sacrificed their lives to save the village. However, he might have changed his mind and decided to remain retired rather than die needlessly if he had sent you to find me. Naruto clenched his fist. You've changed, Jiraiya said. I don't know if you've always thought this or if these are new thoughts. Time changes people, replied Tsunade. I've realized the truth, only a fool would want to be Hokage. Oh, that's hilarious. It's silly to want to be the village's strongest ninja, but it's acceptable to live on the run from debt collectors. How on earth is she qualified to be the Hokage? Naruto, please calm down. Tsunade is the ideal Hokage. In addition to being the best medic nin in the world, she played a significant role in Konoha's World War II triumphs. Jiraiya clarified, being a Hokage is in her blood because her grandfather was Hashirama Senju, the Shodai Hokage, and her granduncle was Tobarama Senju, the Nidaime Hokage. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Perhaps we should just give Asuma the hat if being related to a Hokage is the only requirement. If Konohamaru wants the hat, let him be the Hokage. They must both be superior to this inebriated elderly lady. Make her ninja work to settle all of her debts, or better yet, lose Konoha in a wager with Iwa on her first day. With a controlled anger, Tsunade said, Look Gaki, just because you're the pervert student. Super pervert. I'm not his student. From where did these tentacles originate? From the kitchen, the cook yelled. It doesn't imply that you are anything, your twisted boss. Super perverted. Not my master, my god, it has my legs. Could never beat me in a fight and you can't either. Is that difficult? Naruto inquired. Tsunade said, I could beat you with one finger? Those don't go there. All right, put your non-existent money where your mouth is, let's step outside. Gladly brat, Tsunade exclaimed as she stormed out amid irritated Naruto, excited Anko, worried Shizune, agitated Jiraiya, and apathetic Taunton. Why isn't anyone assisting me? The cook wept. The two fighters stood across the street from one another. Jiraiya thought, well kid, you're better than me. Maybe after Tsunade crushes a few bones you'll realize how much you need my help and drop this silly beef you've got with me. Since I feel sorry for you having to spend time around the pervert, I'll go easy on you and just use one finger, taunted Tsunade. I don't need the sympathy, but I do appreciate it. In addition, I genuinely feel bad about arguing with someone your age, Naruto answered. Tsunade taunted, come on then, show me what you got. Naruto charged the buxom blonde, and she rolled her eyes at the obvious attack, ignoring the gauntlets that were forming on his arms. Tsunade easily deflected the left punch with her right pointer finger, which caused him to spin. Naruto then took advantage of his spinning and, to her surprise, unleashed a quartet of metallic tentacles that blindsided her and sent her off balance. Naruto recovered first, and she launched a flurry of strikes from both tentacles and fists, but most of the shots missed the Sannin, who, despite or perhaps because of her inebriation, managed to dodge all but the luckiest strikes, ending with a tentacle slap to the face that sent her reeling back. "Ba-chan, do you want to give up now?" Naruto mockingly said. "I'd hate to make you soil yourself in terror." Tsunade retorted, "We'll see who soils themselves," before slamming her finger into the ground, causing it to tremble and sending people running for cover. Naruto staggered as the ground trembled, but the tentacles swiftly grabbed onto the ground to keep him upright this time. Tsunade charged and dropped her finger once more, missing the mechanized blonde as he leapt out of the way. The gauntlets changed into talons without anyone noticing. "I'm not going to win a match of strength," Naruto thought as he dodged, "but maybe I can win a match of stamina, especially if I use these." When Tsunade came to attack Naruto once more, he leapt into action, latching onto her right arm with his left talon and then beginning to drain her chakra. Tsunade looked shocked as the hinge on her right arm began to fade away around the metal talon, forcing Naruto to release it. The female Sannin twisted her body and punched him in the stomach, sending him flying. Warning signs flashed on Naruto's HUD, but he ignored them as he forced the talons back into gauntlets, the left one taking longer than the right for some reason. He then extended his tentacles to cling to a nearby lamppost and used them to swing around it, reversing his direction so he was flying towards Tsunade as he charged both fists to shoot energy. Tsunade responded by throwing her right fist forward to strike the blonde in the face, but she caught him squarely in the left fist as Naruto fired. The slug Sannin froze at the sight, and Naruto stared at the motionless woman as Tsunade recovered first and looked down at her right arm. The hinge had restored itself, and the arm looked young and unblemished again except that her hand was covered in blood. There was a brief flash, followed by an explosion that sent both blondes backward. Hemophobia in a medic nin. "Ah, I'm overanalyzing, I should keep moving. There's blood on her hands, so maybe she hasn't been hurt in a long time, and she's shocked because she can be hurt. No, I hurt her earlier unless it's the blood." Naruto rushed forward, prepared to deliver a knockout blow from his right arm, but Jiraiya grabbed his right upper arm, causing him to veer off course and collide with a wall. "Enough. You two have created enough of a mess of things," said the Toad Sage sternly. Naruto reportedly said, "Okay, I'll go so you two can talk." Naruto started to head back toward the hotel, and after glancing at both groups, Anko hurried to catch up with the blonde. "Well, that went well," she joked while standing next to him. "What were you thinking? Are people following us?" After they rounded a bend and were out of the Sannin's line of sight, Naruto inquired. "What? Are people following us?" He said it again. "No." As soon as Anko finished speaking, Naruto's eyes widened and he leaned against the wall, gripping his ribs with his right arm as he gasped in agony. "What's not right?" Anko inquired. Anko's hand glowed as she put it on Naruto's ribs, causing a hiss of pain. A few seconds later, she took her hand away and scowled. "For an old drunk she hits hard," she said. "Well, you've definitely cracked or broken a couple ribs, probably bruised a few too." She noticed a small puddle of blood near his feet and noticed blood dripping from his left hand when she looked directly above it. "Are you familiar with medical jutsu?" In an attempt to divert her attention, Naruto asked. "Just the general diagnostic one. My former well, he wanted me to know first aid and the best way to perform it in the field." "How often have you done it?" "We were standing next to two medic nins, so why didn't you say anything?" "Stop trying to change the subject," Anko commanded. "I didn't want the slug lady to get pleasure from seeing me suffer. Could you please take care of me?" "Yeah, but it will just be field medicine. Do your best, Anko. I know you'll do great." Naruto laughed and said, "Come on, if I'm going to do it then I'd rather do it in the hotel room," she inquired. Anko rolled her eyes and said, "I learn more about you all the time." Eventually, the two arrived at their room. "Take your shirt off," Anko commanded. Naruto joked, attempting to ignore the pain. "I bet you say that to all your patients," as he took off his jacket gradually. "Just the cute ones," Anko replied. "Want some assistance?" In an attempt to ignore Naruto's surprisingly muscular body, Anko grabbed the bottom of his shirt and pulled it off, saying, "Please." The violet-haired Kunoichi quickly placed the ice pack against his ribs and wrapped it loosely around his chest, saying, "This should help with the pain. How come you haven't taken off your gauntlet?" When Anko noticed it was still on his left arm but not his right, he asked. "That's more complicated," Naruto clarified. "I'll have to do it alone." "All right," said Anko, I'm available if you need me. The blonde turned on his HUD and had it diagnose the damage. Thanks. Naruto took his backpack, went into the bathroom, and locked it. He trusted Anko in the field, but not with the secrets of his technology. Damn, he thought as he got a good look at his hand, and saw that the panel where the vibrations were released was smashed and fragmented, with the pieces digging in or, in some cases, buried in the flesh. As the reports gradually came in, he thought, well, it's wrecked. The nanites that formed around his left arm were all damaged. Somehow the shockwave from the punch must have traveled back along my arm and broken them, but my arm is fine except for my hand. Why not? Maybe it has something to do with the Kyuubi. The fox might have been useful for now. I'll just have to remove the gauntlet and order it to repair itself since the nanites can't be reabsorbed right now. It's about time. I was starting to get lonesome. Naruto sat down on the bed, and Anko took out a small bottle of disinfectant, a jar of cream, some cotton, and more bandages. This might sting, Anko warned as she touched one of the cuts with the cotton ball, and Naruto winced as a burning sensation filled everywhere she touched. The alcohol will sterilize the wound, Anko explained after finishing the last cut. Anko opened the jar and applied a large dab of cream to Naruto's hand. While the cream will fix the skin, encourage bone repair, and everything else a magic medicine is supposed to do. Did I perform well, then? Anko brought the bandaged hand to her lips and kissed it tenderly. A great job, Naruto said. You did everything except kiss it and make it better. Improved? A lot? Naruto rose slowly, saying, I think I'll hang on the wall, stretch my tentacles, and get some rest. No, Anko said gently, stopping him with her hand on his chest. You will be sleeping in the bed tonight. Anko, I'll be fine hanging on the wall. No, when sleeping with cracked ribs you need back support now. Are you going to be a good patient for Nurse Anko or do I have to tie you up? She replied with a grin. Okay, Nurse Anko. You win? Good, although it would have been more fun if you had said, no. Naruto said, maybe when I'm feeling better, while lying down. You need anything? Just some company. I want to know more about you. Anko sat in a chair and said, like what? Well, you keep mentioning an old sensei. Who was he? Anko snapped, I don't want to talk about him. Was he that bad? Did yours try to kill you too? Anko finally responded with a frown. He gave me a gift, and he didn't like how I reacted to it, so he abandoned me. What was the gift? I'd rather not talk about it. Okay, then who is he? Why do I want to know? Anko smiled slightly at Naruto's response before responding, so I know whose face I'm going to punch in for you. It's Orochimaru. If this changes anything between us. Why should it? I know what people call me behind my back. Traitor's student, snake bitch, snake whore. Naruto said in the same tone, damn brat, monster, demon. Anko paused, gazing. We're both victims of other people's actions, you with your teacher's treachery and me with the fourth's heroism. Naruto used sarcasm within the sentence, which Anko could hear. I am no more what's inside me than you or what your teacher did to you. Anko questioned, how'd you get so smart? I died, then I was brought back from the dead, and then a lot of information was stuffed in my head, Naruto said in a conversational manner. It's getting late and I'm shot. I think I'm going to get some sleep unless you don't want me to sleep in here anymore. Anko tried to settle into her chair and replied, no, I want you to stay. After all, we victims have to stick together. Naruto said, plenty of room here, as he patted the bed's empty half. Trying to get me to go to bed with you? Anko laughed, how bold. Naruto retorted, says the woman who took off my shirt and offered to tie me up. After giving it some thought, Anko stood up and lay down on her side with her back to Naruto. Anko shivered beneath the covers and they fell asleep shortly after. You might as well get under the covers, I'll be warm enough above them. The Third Shinobi World War started too soon due to a foolish act for Suna. Things went smoothly at first. Established commanders like Yuan and younger ones like Lady Chiyo's grandson Sasori, who became known as Sasori of the Red Sand, Akasuna no Sasori. Because of his clever puppets that dyed the sand red with the blood of his enemies, were able to barely breach their defenses. Regretfully, he and the third Cage would both vanish during the conflict, and new problems would arise. Lord Cage must be found immediately, exclaimed Tanaka. We must send as many shinobi as possible out to find him. I'm not saying we shouldn't hunt for him, Yuan said, but we should only send out hunter ninja squads so that we won't advertise our strongest shinobi is missing. Both suggestions have merit, said Lady Chiyo, but we need to find him as soon as possible, and the more eyes out there, the soon he will be found. Mobilize all available shinobi. A new Cage would be selected since the third could not be located. Lady Chiyo put the Cage's hat on Tanaka's flaming red head and declared, we bestow upon you the title of Cage. May you reign, Lord Tanaka. based on your talent and commitment to enhancing Suna. Thank you, Lady Chio. I swear to defend Suna for all my days. Send word to the commanders to begin preparations for counterattacks in Yuan. You have proven you can protect small bases from attack, that is your worth to Suna, and so you will coordinate the defenses of the northern bases. Dismissed. Yuan departed with more rage than he had ever experienced, and he used that rage as motivation to develop novel and amazing defensive tactics to thwart Iwa's attacks with the fewest possible casualties. These tactics ranged from straightforward ambushes to information-sharing negotiations with the Land of Rocks. Tanaka continued to attack Iwa at the same time, with disastrous results among his men. Yuan became well known. When the war finally came to an end, Yuan was able to go back to Suna. Welcome back, Yuan. I believe congratulations are in order. Thank you, Lord Casecage. I am honored that so many of my men were able to return home safely. Yes, but I wasn't referring to your impressive low casualty reports. Sir, you've been promoted. What is my new rank? You are Suna's first global observer. What does that mean? It means that you will go out and wander the elemental nations and report everything of importance back to Suna. We believe that with your skills, it would be worth more to Suna if you were out in the world gathering intelligence. Tanaka presented him with a list. This is a list that Lady Chio has provided as drop-off points. Somebody from her network will collect the information and pass it along to Suna. Memorize them and destroy the list. If Lady Chio has a spy network out there already, why am I needed? Yuan inquired. Her network's members are all static. You will be able to move and possibly follow up on anything of note. With some knowledge of the answer, Yuan inquired, when will my mission be completed? When I decide it would be worth more to Suna to bring you back, perhaps we will find something more worthy to bring you back. For messages may be left for you at the drop points. You'll leave first thing in the morning. Oh, and leave your identifying papers with the gatekeepers. We don't want anybody to believe you are spying on them for us, do we? Dismissed? Yuan was once again promoted out of his village and left the Casecage's office. A nearby voice stopped him as he was making his way home. Commander Yuan. Yuan turned to face a number of men he had personally led during the last weeks of the conflict, including Kiri, an old friend who was a medic. Hello, men, but I'm afraid I'm not your commander anymore, Yuan said. One of them said, Sir, Lord Casecage has transferred me to long-term intelligence gathering, Yuan clarified. How long-term? With red eyes full of grief and rage, Yuan replied, quite likely until I die. He might not see his village again. Kiri inquired, so has the Casecage exiled you? No, I'm to continually report in so he knows what I've been up to, but I'm to leave tomorrow morning. Tomorrow. But that's, Yuan concluded, his prerogative. It's been an honor, gentlemen. Keep Suna intact for me. I intend to return one day. This isn't right, Kiri said. A good man is being driven out and we must follow the orders of Theta. Don't finish that thought, Yuan said, unless you want to join me on my world tour. Right, just remember there are those of us who know how hard you fought for Suna and we'll do what we can to bring you back soon. Thank you, Kiri. Yuan then departed. The following morning, he would leave Suna. The following morning, Naruto had an odd weight on his good arm. Anko seemed to have rolled over during the night and was now using the blonde as a pillow. As Naruto checked his HUD, he let Anko sleep without moving or speaking. There was something strange about Tsunade's chakra that had interfered with the nanites in the left arm that were exposed to it. The nanites he left behind to help with the repairs revealed that the chakra had essentially destroyed every single nanite's electronics. It would be simpler to disassemble them to their most basic components, remove any leftover chakra, and then rebuild them from there. However, this would take hours or days and rob him of his left wing and gauntlet. He remotely signaled them to start the process because, regrettably, there was no other option. Morning, he heard Anko murmur drowsily, good morning, how'd you sleep? Good, Anko muttered, still half asleep. This pillow is really warm. When Anko realized what she was using as a pillow, her eyes snapped open, and she sat up, saying, thank you, I try. I'm sorry, did I hurt your ribs? Anko actually laughed when he said, no, but I think I'm going to take it easy today, avoid kicking annoying old lad ass if I can. Anko stopped laughing and gave his right shoulder a hard slap. The only thing I could complain about is this puddle of drool on my chest. Now where could that have come from? He asked. After saying, just for that, I'm going to change clothes in the bathroom instead of out here like I planned. Anko gathered her belongings and proceeded to take a shower and change. After both had completed their morning rituals, a while later, Naruto said, well, should we go out for breakfast? Anko questioned, what about Jiraiya? A knock on the door interrupted Naruto, saying, let him find his own breakfast. Besides, well, speak of the idiot and he appears. The injured blonde opened the door and saw two black-haired men with red clouds on their black cloaks. One was tall and had red eyes, and the other was a hunchback with a mask over the lower portion of his face. He said simply, "Naruto, you're coming with us." Note from the author. Gotcha. I never used Kisame in the story before, but honestly, none of you saw Sasori coming. Yes, in an author's note, but not in the narrative. I apologize to everyone who voted for Kisame, but he won't be around for a while. Why? You might find the answer in my collection of one-shots, Spiraling Themes, in which I offer my interpretation of popular story themes. So, if you haven't already, make your predictions. Just to be fair, I've included Sasori as an option. Since Gaara's father doesn't have a name, I just used a portion of his voice actor Masahiko Tanaka's name. Sadly, I don't know which is his family name and which isn't. I'm aware that things are different in Japan, but I'm not sure if Wikipedia would present it in its original style. Tell me if you know. Is it common in Suna for Gaara and his siblings to have a last name? The irony is that I transformed the Second Shinobi World War into our World War Oniya, the precursor to the Nazi Oniya, until I was finished during the 1918 Spring Offensive. Suna represented Germany, Konoha the Soviet Union, AIM England, the United States, and Iwa France. Yes, France. Well, check that out before you go and vote in the poll and leave a review. Enjoy what happens when I watch the Simpsons movie, read Detective Comics 500, and watch Naruto all in one day. The Rise of the Pork Knight. It was one of those gloomy nights that promised both great and terrible things. The wealthiest family in Tanzaku Town, the Wakis, were leaving the theater following a performance. Dr. Waki asked his son, "Did you enjoy the show?" "Yeah," his young son Bamani replied, "the best part." But he paused when a shadowy figure brandishing a crossbow emerged in front of them. TW questioned, What is this?" The robber commanded, "It's called a stick-up, buddy. I'll take that necklace the lady's wearing." Putting himself between the robber and his family, TW retorted, "You hoodlum. Don't you dare put a hand on my wife." For the rest of his life, Bamani would remember what transpired next. The robber raised his crossbow and aimed it at Bamani. A tiny, pink figure suddenly descended from above, snatching the crossbow from his grasp. The pink blur knocked the robber down and sent him flying into a wall, knocking him out in a flurry of blows and grunts. Running up the wall was the pink figure. The Wakis glance up in hopes of catching a fleeting glimpse of their rescuer. But the moment the police arrived to look into the noise, the parents' focus was diverted. Unaware that she had been spotted by a single young person, Taunton fled as soon as she heard the police arrive. Bamani made a mental vow. "I swear that I will become a crime fighter like the one who saved me." A loud oink pierced the night. "My disguise must be able to strike terror into their hearts. I must become, criminals are a superstitious cowardly lot. A pig." And the Hogman legend started that evening. "You must accompany us," Itachi commanded. "Sorry, I was taught not to go off with strangers." "Who are you?" replied Naruto. "Itachi Uchiha," Anko replied, glaring at the renegade Uchiha of Konoha. "Anko Mitarashi," Itachi said, "I was not expecting to see you here." Itachi's partner said, "Obviously she's like her sensei and goes where she's not wanted." Anko said, "And you are?" Sasori answered, "Akasuna no Sasori, Sasori of the Red Sand." Suna's human puppet master, Anko said loudly, "And the man who killed the Uchiha clan. I don't know who's worse, the man who kills people to make tools out of them or the one who killed his family to show of his strength." "Your opinion is irrelevant, you must come with us, Kyuubi," Itachi said. Naruto hastily slammed the door and secured it with his tentacles, saying, "Well, when you put it that way, I think we need to leave now." "How?" inquired Anko. Anko opened the large window and peered out. "Window. We're too high up, it would take too long to run down the side and we wouldn't survive a fall." "I've survived higher falls," Naruto declared as he grabbed Anko and dashed to the window. Just as their adversaries opened the door, the pair jumped out the open window. Naruto used his vulture program to create Adrian Toome's wingsa, or rather, his right winga, as they dove toward the street below. "Whoa! The left arm isn't working yet." Naruto thought to slow their descent. He turned Toome's anti-gravity harness up to its highest setting. "Is this flying?" inquiries Anko made as the pair descended toward the ground. The blonde answered, "Technically, no, it's not flying, it's falling with style." In order to change the direction of their momentum and make landing easier, Naruto suddenly reactivated and extended his tentacles to grab onto a nearby pole. "Impressive," Sasori remarked as he peered out the window. "I had no idea the Kyuubi Jinchuriki could fly." Itachi gave the order, "I'll go after them. Catch up to us when you can." Sasori, who was still observing the street, inquired, "And how do you intend to get down there?" Itachi vanished abruptly as a murder of crows flew out the window. "Impressive," said Sasori. "If I could find a way to continue using his dojutsu." I might have to turn Itachi into a puppet someday. An alley with a dumpster in it was passed by Naruto and Anko as they ran down the street. Naruto questioned, "Did we lose them?" A murder of crows passed them and united to form Itachi before Anko could respond. Itachi said, "You need to come with me, Kyuubi." In response, Anko threw multiple shuriken. Itachi used a flourish of his kunai to block them. The Konoha pair had an opportunity to turn around and sprint down the alley they had just passed because of this diversion. Just loud enough for her to hear, Naruto questioned, "Can you make a shadow clone?" Yes. Naruto took a tiny metal cube out of his pocket and said, "Good, when I say, now, make one." Itachi was standing at the alley's entrance when Naruto dropped the cube after he pressed in on one side and it beeped softly. Itachi was momentarily blinded by the cube's brilliant flash of light. Itachi heard Naruto say, "Now," and then heard clones forming. Then Itachi heard kunai flying in his direction. A wall of stone rose from the ground as Itachi's hands flew through hand signals he had copied from an Iwa nin. The Uchiha waited for the sound of kunai hitting after ducking out of the alley in a matter of seconds. Itachi's vision returned, noting that the kunai left behind were normal kunai. He disregarded the wall. Or perhaps poisoned, he considered. At the opposite end of the alley, he saw 3 pairs of his targets. In order to see the 6 runners' chakra, Itachi pushed his Sharingan. Itachi raced down the alley past the small cube and 2 dumpsters, saying, "Using clones to confuse me and a flashbang to blind me is a somewhat impressive plan, but 5 of the clones have a matching chakra signature. The Anko with a unique signature must be the real Anko and the real Naruto must be with her." After a minute of silence in the alley, a blonde head appeared through one of the dumpster's lids. Anko also phased through the dumpster, and Naruto said, "The coast's clear," as he picked up his cube and walked through it. "How?" Confused, she asked. Naruto said, "I'm just that awesome," as he secretly pressed a button on the cube to make the dumpster vanish. "Now what should we do?" "Go back to our room, get our stuff, and find Jiraiya," Anko said. "Why? Who would think that the pursued would return to their original location?" "You make a valid point, but I meant to ask why you got Jiraiya. Let's head out." Naruto and Anko returned to their room, packed, and left. "All right. Where would you be if you were Jiraiya?" Anko inquired. "Cemetery," Naruto replied. "A cemetery? If I was turned into the toad, I'd have hung myself by now." "Is it really appropriate to make fun of Jiraiya right now?" Anko inquired. "It's always a good time to insult him. Where would he be, really?" "Probably in one of the town's many brothels. Let's start at one end of town and work our way to the other." "Which end?" "The departure from Itachi." They ran away from the direction they had sent the Uchiha, going from brothel door to whorehouse door in search of the toad sage. Naruto offered, and Anko nodded. "This is getting us nowhere," Anko said. "So, what ought we to do?" Naruto inquired. One of the voices behind them said, "Surrender." The 2 turned and saw Sasori. "I don't think so," Naruto answered. "That wasn't a request," Sasori said, raising his left arm to launch a Senbon barrage that Anko and Naruto had to avoid. As the Naruto and Anko he was pursuing rose in a puff of smoke, Itachi scowled. "Clones? If these were clones, then where are the originals?" he asked himself. The elder Uchiha glanced around the alley and saw a man with white hair that he recognized. The 2 medic nin and a pig were touring Tanzaku Castle, one of Tanzaku Town's few non-gambling or prostitution-based attractions. Far from the battle, Shizune was enjoying the architecture, the intricate designs, the artwork on display, etc. Tsunade was pretending to take it in, trying to use it as a diversion, but failing because she kept thinking about her old teammate's offer and his obnoxious apprentice Taunton was indifferent. Shinzune interrupted Tsunade's reverie with the words, "Lady Tsunade, it states here that the castle was constructed entirely of stone that had been quarried from the land of lightning." The slug Sanin and her apprentice turned to see the snake Sanin and a young man with silver hair. "Actually, that's a lie," a familiar voice hissed behind her. "The walls are 3 blocks thick. The outer blocks are from the land of lightning, but the center blocks were harvested from a closer quarry to alleviate costs." "It's been a while, Tsunade. Hello." "Not long enough," Tsunade retorted. "Why are you here? Don't even attempt to tell me that you want to catch up." "You wound me, Tsunade, but I do have a small favor to ask of you." "What kind of favor?" Tsunade's trained eyes scanned this former teammate and concluded, his heart rate's erratic. From his complexion, he has a high fever and he's been in a state of exhaustion for a while. And his arms, as she noticed some strange twitching and spasms in his elbow. Her mind quickly whittled down the list of potential causes, ruling out anything that wouldn't be exhibiting the same symptoms as Orochimaru. A lightning jutsu would have worn off by now, Unless it was one of Kumo's strongest incapacitating jutsu, Konoha may have received one of them after the last peace treaty, but it should affect the entire body, not just an arm. It could be a clan-specific technique, but I'd need to know who did it to him. Lady Tsunade, Kabuto said, you probably already know. Tsunade interrupted, saying, I stopped taking medicine a long time ago, go ask somebody else. But we cannot, Kabuto said in a tone that bordered on pleading. You have to realize how serious his injuries are. Nobody else can heal his arms. Only you, Princess Tsunade, the woman who became well known as a medial expert and as one of the 3 legendary great shinobi. Orochimaru, Kabuto, flattery doesn't work on our princess, said. Tsunade remarked, those are not your typical injuries. What happened to you, Orochimaru? You may have heard about the recent battle raged in Konoha. I was there and received a very specific injury that only you can treat, Orochimaru said. With whom did you clash? Sensei, the snake Sanin replied, sounding as though he were being asked what color the sky was. Sadly, the old man had more life in him than I thought. You'd have murdered your own sensei? Shocked, Shizune inquired. Orochimaru said, he wouldn't be the first man I've killed, and he won't be the last. No need to frown, princess. Everything eventually comes to an end, including people. Tsunade snarled at her former teammate, but you ought to know that better than most. After all, you let the 2 people you love most in the world die. She allowed 2 people she loved to die? Kabuto asked in disbelief before realizing Orochimaru's motivation. I see now, you are a cruel man. Oh yes, those were such brutal deaths, Orochimaru said, laughing as if recalling a humorous joke while continuing to ignore the other person's reactions. Did they not have Tsunade? She laced these needles with poison and fired them almost too fast for me to block. Tsunade's companion is good, Kabuto said after Shizune pulled back her sleeve to reveal a series of senbon launchers and fired them before Tsunade could react. Kabuto quickly threw himself in front of his master, deflecting the first 4 senbon with the metal plates on his gloves and catching the 5th to examine it. Tsunade turned to smile at her former teammate after giving the order, stand down Shizune. Orochimaru, you were always a creep, but you ought to know better than that. She said, you mock me? Tsunade casually swung her right arm backward and used it to smash the wall behind it to rubble her face, changing to a dead serious expression, and you'll be murdered. All right. We did not come here to fight you, Lady Tsunade, Kabuto said quickly, his eyes wide with surprise. We just want to make an agreement with you. Lord Orochimaru's arms can only be healed by you. You're not being asked to do it for nothing. Would you kindly take a look at our offer? I'm going to give you a count of 5, Tsunade said, her eyes narrowing as she looked down at both men. Before I finish, get lost, or I'll erase you. Please calm down, Kabuto begged. 5. I don't think you'll. 4. Be disappointed by our terms. 3. If you would just. 2. Listen, you would. 1. Everyone took a breath, bracing themselves for the worst. I've mastered the forbidden jutsu. Everyone froze when Orochimaru said, I can reanimate both your lover and your beloved little brother. Does the fact that we're both standing here unharmed mean our offer is acceptable? As she considered her departed loved ones, Tsunade's eyes narrowed. Don't you want to see them again, Tsunade? How would you react if I fixed your arm? Tsunade inquired. The snake Sanin retorted, I hate lies, so I'll be square with you. I shall annihilate Konoha once and for all. Destroy Konoha? Shizune said it again. Your response? Kabuto inquired. Lady Tsunade. You mustn't be seduced by their charming conversation. Shizune yelled, my uncle and your younger brother would not approve of this. Lady Tsunade. Have you forgotten your dream, your wish, or their wishes? I am aware of it. Regardless of what you say, you still, in your heart. Silence. Shizune. Tsunade yelled. You do not need to give us your answer this very minute. However, we would like a response within a week's time. Orochimaru clarified. Oh, and just so you know, this forbidden jutsu requires live sacrifices, so if you could please have 2 people prepared on your end. Lady Tsunade. Let's kill them right now, Shizune yelled, assuming a combat stance beside her. Lady Orochimaru has lost strength. This is our best opportunity. We can defeat them together, Lady Tsunade. When Orochimaru brought the hand on his injured arm to his mouth and bit one of his fingers, causing blood to drip out, Tsunade hesitated, her mind lost in the possibilities. Her entire body froze at the sight of Orochimaru's crimson blood, and she began to shake in fear as every failure forced itself to the forefront of her mind. Shizune cursed to herself, as her former teammate, he knew about that too, huh? With a slightly mocking tone, Orochimaru said, I may be weakened, but I know Tsunade's weaknesses too. He turned to his companion and said, you still haven't gotten over your fear of blood yet? Shall we get going, Kabuto? The 2 started to leave the castle, leaving a stunned slug Sanin and her apprentice behind. Tsunade, I expect a favorable response, Orochimaru called back. Lady Tsunade, Shizune said, you cannot help him. He tried to destroy Konoha, our home. Dan and... After making sure the men were out of earshot, Tsunade commanded, Shizune, shut up. Shizune ceased speaking and gazed at her master as though she had never seen her before. After a moment of staring at the spot where Orochimaru had stood and bleeding, Tsunade declared, I'm going to get a drink, and turned to leave. Normally, Shizune would have chased after her right away, but this time, she saw her leave and then began to move in a different direction. Sasori was upset because the Jincha, Riki and his ostentatious rival were successfully avoiding his blows, or in the Jincha, Riki's case, deflecting them from his back with metallic appendages. It had gotten to the point where he had called forth two of his puppets, not his beloved human puppets, but the typical Suna shinobi kinda to aid him in battle. The two avoided his puppets' poisoned touches and projectiles despite the additional bodies. Orochimaru had mentioned his former apprentice a few times, so the purple-haired girl wasn't particularly surprising. But the blonde was, because everything the Akatsuki had on him indicated that he was, at best, a poorly trained berserker, and now he was avoiding the strikes that had previously taken down Anbu for several minutes. The pattern persisted in this manner, with Naruto occasionally interrupting the action with a blow from his metal arms before using an air blast to sever the puppet's chest compartment completely. Naruto's joy was short-lived as Itachi materialized beside Sasori, who summoned the remnants of his puppets. Naruto, don't look Itachi in the eyes. He'll use the Sharingan to put you in a genjutsu, Enko said. Right, Naruto replied. Sasori whispered to his temporary partner, what kept you? Itachi retorted, the Kyuubi's smarter than he looks. Silently, Naruto questioned, any ideas? Enko asked her opponents out loud, why do you want Naruto? Itachi replied, you don't need to know, why are missing nins from different nations working together? Itachi replied, you don't need to know, Enko inquired, how did you find us? Sasori responded, the people in Konoha have big mouths, the puppet user said, now we've wasted enough time, and launched his remaining puppet into an assault. In response, Naruto dropped another cube that flashed brightly. After protecting their eyes, the missing nins discovered that they were in a thick jungle. What happened? Are we in a genjutsu? Sasori inquired. My eyes aren't detecting one, and none of my methods for dispelling one are working, Itachi replied in his typical monotone, but with a hint of bewilderment. So, did he call forth these trees? Is this Mokuton? No, his lineage does not include any Senju, although they are distant cousins on the Uzumaki side. Tsunade would be the closest connection. How are these trees doing, then? As he was saying this, Itachi touched a hanging vine, causing it to swing. I don't know, but these plants are all behaving like they are supposed to. We should move. Where? The Akatsuki pair hurried to where they believed Naruto was hiding and said, not here. The Uchiha clan's killer glanced around before returning to their starting point and said, our path? The Kyuubi was over there, so let's start with that way. How about it? I see nothing at all. Indeed, it appears immaculate. We came that way, but you can't tell how woulda. Itachi's thoughts were interrupted by two snakes that emerged from a tree trunk and would have bitten him if he hadn't leapt out of the way and killed them with a pair of shuriken. They must be. Itachi stopped when his Sharingan sensed a pulse of air approaching him. He tried to warn Sasori, but it was too late. The puppet user took the full brunt of the blast, knocking him off his feet and sending him through a tree. A split second later, Itachi appeared beside his partner, just in time to unleash a fireball that destroyed the exploding kunai that were descending on him. Sasori remarked, he's trying to snipe us. Itachi was interrupted once more as Naruto leapt from the tree and attacked the two with tentacles, while Sasori retaliated with his tail. They're both keeping their distance, we should. As Naruto said, nice tail, he asked, if it's okay with you, does controlling it feel like a natural part of your body or like you're controlling something alien? What? As he and the tentacles bobbed and swerved around the Akatsuki's attacks, Naruto explained, I noticed your tail didn't move quite as fluidly as it could. My tentacles have become an extension of my body. Sasori responded, I'll show you how fluidly I can move. He then abruptly called forth 4 humanoid puppets, each of which swiftly subdued and restrained one of Naruto's tentacles, enabling Sasori to stab Naruto in the shoulder with his tail blade. So tell me, Jincha, Riki, does my poison burn you as much as it has my other foes? Naruto let out a painful gasp before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Itachi complained, another clone, and as if on cue, more clones began to emerge and attack the Akatsuki members. The missing nins retaliated with equal ferocity, shooting the clones in the body or stabbing them in the arms or legs. Itachi saw a disturbance in the air approaching them as they battled to destroy their target's clones. Itachi's warning, "Sasori, watch," came too late as the air blast hit his teammate, sending the puppet master skidding across the ground until he vanished in the jungle. The Uchiha killer attempted to regroup with his teammate but was interrupted by a barrage of fireballs. "What a creative idea to use a fire technique against Uchiha," Itachi remarked out loud, "or at least it would be if your master hadn't tried the same thing when I fought him." Anko retaliated with a barrage of kunai, forcing Itachi to move in the opposite direction as his teammate. Divide and conquer, another standard Orochimaru technique. Itachi ducked as two Naruto clones swung at his head with their tentacles, then rolled to the side to avoid being impaled by another pair of tentacles. Itachi had ample warning of his enemy's attacks thanks to his Sharingan, which made it easy for the Uchiha to avoid them with as little effort as shifting his head slightly out of the way. Anko attempted to stab Itachi, but the Uchiha substituted himself for a nearby log. "This is a pointless endeavor, Kyuubi. You cannot fight us off indefinitely," Itachi said. "If you surrender now, we will show mercy to your teammate." Crap, where did he? Anko's curse was interrupted when Itachi suddenly appeared behind her, ready to stab her, but Naruto stopped him by lunging at him with his tentacles. Itachi then vanished once more and reappeared in front of Anko. Ready to punch her, Anko blocked Itachi's blows and counterattacked with a punch. But the Uchiha vanished once more before it could make contact. "We need a plan," Naruto proposed. Itachi reappeared, surprising Anko with a forceful kick to the ribs that sent her reeling back. Naruto attempted to strike Itachi with his fists, but Itachi deflected them and then looked directly into Naruto's eyes while spinning his Sharingan. Just as abruptly as it had begun, the world returned to normal, with the exception of Itachi, who was staggering backward after one of Naruto's tentacles had slashed at his face. Naruto felt the world begin to dissolve and reform into an odd mixture of red and black. "Go, Naruto!" Itachi countered by building a wall of water to smother the flames, but Naruto's tentacles reacted for him by pulling him off to the side out of the path of Anko's fireball. Naruto snapped out of shock and launched an air blast from his soul gauntlet that smashed through the water and struck the Uchiha. Anko took advantage of Naruto's attack by charging in to bite the stunned Itachi with snakes she called forth from her sleeves. The snake's fangs dug into Itachi's flesh, but he vanished in a cloud of smoke, replacing him with a log. "I'm starting to think that is his favorite jutsu," Naruto said, but Anko's response was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a massive water dragon that tore through the jungle and abruptly vanished as it bore down on the two Konoha ninjas. Naruto grabbed Anko with his tentacles and fired off a massive blast of air, sending the two into the air and barely avoiding being struck by the water dragon. The two fell to the ground and rolled to break their fall, and Itachi appeared in front of them. The two shinobi exchanged blows, with Itachi easily avoiding Naruto's until one of Naruto's tentacles took an unexpected turn, taking Itachi by surprise. Naruto took advantage of the Uchiha's infrequent error and punched him in the gut with a vibrating punch, sending the Uchiha killer reeling backward. Naruto charged forward, prepared to strike Itachi once more, but was interrupted by the sudden appearance of one of Sasori's wooden puppets, which was about to slash his head off with a swinging blade. Naruto avoided the slash and punched the puppet, cracking its chest cavity. Two more puppets appeared to charge at Naruto, but they were stopped by a stream of fire that created a wall of flames that separated the Akatsuki members and puppets from their targets. Another puppet flanked Naruto to slice at him, but two of Naruto's tentacles grabbed the approaching attacker and threw it over Naruto's shoulder to collide with the first puppet. Sasori took advantage of this brief respite to sit next to Itachi. Itachi said, "You're late." Itachi looked at his partner and said, "You're bleeding," to which Sasori pointed to his chin. Itachi then brought the back of his hand to his chin and rubbed it, and to his surprise, he saw a bright red streak of his blood on his hand. "It looks pretty deep too. You're probably going to have a scar," Itachi said. "You okay?" Anko inquired as she materialized beside Naruto. "Yes, what is the estimated duration of this fire?" Anko began. "It should last," but was interrupted by a stream of water that swept over the fire, putting it out and making the Konoha ninjas leap back to escape the assault. Sasori's voice yelled, "Akahiji! Shimei Takina Dasu Red Secret Technique, Deadly Dozen," as a dozen puppets, all dressed in matching brown robes and all eerily human-looking, were called forth to fight at their master's command. Anko and Naruto were repeatedly pushed back by the onslaught of the puppets, forcing them to constantly dodge attacks without being able to counterattack. In desperation, Naruto began firing his air blasts, and one of the blasts finally connected, smashing one of the robed puppets into another, instantly shattering both of them. Anko used one kunai to block a puppet's claws and another to stab it. She then sidestepped an attack from another puppet and kicked the kunai in the first puppet's chest, driving it inside and sending it backward. Anko then ducked under the second puppet's punches, punched it back toward the first puppet, and used the second puppet as a shield while the explosion destroyed the first puppet and tore into the second puppet's back, rendering it inoperable. Disregarding their shattered comrades, the remaining puppets persisted in their assault, with 2 of them jumping into the air, poised to attack Naruto from above. Rasengan. The Toad Sage continued flying through the wreckage of the first puppet and hit the second with the same attack. Destroying it instantly, he rolled through the air, crashing into the head of a third puppet and smashing it. Jiraiya appeared in midair and used his swirling ball of energy to slam one of the puppets in the chest. 3 of the remaining puppets were positioned around Jiraiya, ready to strike him down. Hari Jizo. Needle Jizo. Jiraiya's hair rapidly grew to surround his body, absorbing the punches and shredding the puppets' hands with their incredible strength and sharpness. Hari Jigoku. Jiraiya's hair flew from his body and pierced through the 3 puppets surrounding him, rendering them inoperable. Needle Hell. Using his tentacles to hold onto one of the surviving puppets, Naruto unleashed an energy blast through its head, creating a perfect hole where its face had been. The real Anko emerged from behind a tree and fired off a fire dragon that burned the puppet to ashes before moving on toward the Akatsuki members. Sasori held out a robed hand and a torrent of water shot out of it, smothering the dragon's flames. Anko bobbed and weaved around the last puppet's bladed hands until she made the fatal mistake of taking a blade to her gut. Jiraiya took point as the 3 Konoha ninja formed a standard triangle across from the 2 Akatsuki members. Lord Jiraiya, Itachi said. Itachi, Jiraiya replied, I am aware that you are pursuing Naruto. I'll just have to look after the 2 of you right here since I can't let you take him. Sasori answered, I don't remember anybody asking permission. Stay back Naruto, I'll handle this, Jiraiya commanded, and the Toad Sage formed one of his favorite jutsu with his hands. Doden. Yomi Numa. Earth Style. Swamp of the Underworld. The grass beneath Itachi and Sasori's feet abruptly turned dark and became swamp ground, trapping them both. Sasori, let's return to base. Itachi gave the order, we are outmatched now that Jiraiya has joined them. Very well, the puppet user with a hunchback concurred, but I don't think they'll just let us go. The Akatsuki members vanished after Itachi responded, leave that to me, Amaterasu. He directed his chakra into his right eye and released a stream of black fire, which he used to create a huge wall of flames that separated the 2 groups and immediately dried out the swamp ground, allowing them to escape its hold. We shall return Kyuubi. Jiraiya cannot protect you forever. After drawing some odd symbols on a scroll, the Toad Sage said, Fa, Ka Ha In, Sealing Jutsu. Fire Seal. The black flames shuddered and then were forcibly drawn into the center of the array and sealed within it. Jiraiya tied the scroll shut and stowed it away. You 2 okay? Anko answered, yes, thank you Jiraiya, we appreciate your assistance. Really? Getting awkwardly close to her, Jiraiya inquired, how appreciative? Jiraiya pouted and turned to face Naruto. But Anko looked her in the eye and replied, not that grateful, you okay? I'm alright. How did you discover us? I am the brave Jiraiya. My finely tuned senses can detect when a comrade or a beautiful woman is in danger, boasted Jiraiya loudly. I quickly rushed here after spotting your need from across town. Gotcha, you stumbled upon us while lost in the woods. As he turned to leave, Naruto said, good to know. Jiraiya swiftly caught up to Naruto and placed his hand on the blonde's shoulder, saying, I meant it back there, I'm not letting anybody take you. Good to know, as I mentioned Anko, hurry up and let's leave. Naruto, Jiraiya said, I know you don't like me, but I'll come running if you need me. Jiraiya left his traveling companions behind and said, but it's okay, I'm going to work on Tsunade. See if I can't get her on our side. All right. Here's hoping the plan works, Jiraiya thought, recalling how he had arrived at the field. The will of fire burns away the will of hate. Itachi ventured to the Toad Sage's side. Jiraiya concluded by pretending that he wasn't currently seated next to Konoha's second most notorious missing nin, so that new trees may freely grow. I have urgent information for you. What is it? The Akatsuki are currently in motion. I'm here with my partner to apprehend Naruto. Who is your partner? Right now it's Akasuna no Sasori, Sasori of the Red Sand. When do you intend to go on strike? The news caused Jiraiya's eyes to widen in shock. We've already struck, but Naruto and Anko got away. They escaped the 2 of you. Itachi paused as his ring began to vibrate. He made clones after blinding me and Sasori has found him. Are you able to locate Sasori? Yes. Good, let's go. The 2 ninjas stood just outside the battlefield, watching it closely after a few tense moments. Jiraiya said, Itachi, I have a little task for you. I need to see what Naruto can do. So please push him to the limit without killing him above all. Once I'm on the field, I want you to make your partner back off as quickly as possible. Naruto must understand why he needs me. Sir, Naruto doesn't believe he needs my training? But you're a Sannin. He is currently blinded by hatred, so he is unable to see that he will swallow his pride and seek my assistance if he believes that I will protect him. I'm positive, Jiraiya clarified. Now that the ball is in your court, Jiraiya thought, okay, kid, get over it and ask me for help. 18 Report a copy of Kusagakure's Village Hidden in the Grass, New Academy Guidelines is enclosed when compared to the previous version, which is also enclosed. It shows a greater emphasis on the use, identification, and treatment of poisons given the increased number of greenhouses in this. It appears likely that Kusa is trying to establish a group of poison masters. Samples of leaves, seeds, and formulas for both poisons and antidotes are enclosed. Report number 21. The demilitarization of Yu no Kuni, Land of Hot Water, appears likely based on the construction of various pleasure-oriented buildings and the presence of the daimyo's wife at meetings of a new religion that preaches universal peace and love. This religion is rapidly spreading throughout the region, and public support for their ninja is gradually waning. I would estimate that it will be several years before all ninjas are expelled and Yu no Kuni and Yugakure, village hidden in hot waters, turn into a nation based solely on entertainment. Report number 29. The Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked Konoha, and Minato Namikaze is dead, supposedly from destroying the demon. Hiruzen Sarutobi is currently in charge, and it is likely that he will take over full-time, but other contenders include his teammates Homura Mitokado and Kaharu Utatane, as well as Danzo Shimura. If Danzo were to become Hokage, I would advise stepping up defense because Danzo is reportedly very pro-military and is said to be in charge of a secret battalion of ninja. The requested documents are enclosed, along with a copy of the report on the relative sizes and significant names of the different clans' survivors. Document 35. Although the identities of the two Jinchuriken are still unknown, it is most likely that they are either members of the Raikage's tag team or one of his relatives. Based on all the information gathered, the Nibi is inside a kunoichi, possibly named Yugo or Yu-Gi-Oh! Kumo's border security has increased once more, requiring 5 separate documents in addition to identification. The exiled, or rather, not exiled but on a long-term mission, Suna Nin sat on a bench far from the drop point and gazed up at the clouds. Yuan had completed writing his most recent report and left it hidden in the drop point, where one of Chiyo's spies would pick it up and leave his next mission scroll behind later. It's not the worst life, he thought, because Tanaka could have sent me on a suicide mission, ordered my execution, or... Stay right there, said a voice as Yuan searched for the source. He was abruptly surrounded by 1 Kumo Kunoichi and 3 dark-skinned shinobi. You were seen attempting to enter Kumo without proper paperwork, and later observed asking numerous questions in the capital, and now we have seen you in a remote part of the woods, far from the crowds where we caught a traitor delivering secret documents hours ago. What does that tell you? The shinobi in front of him inquired. Yuan said, I'm a curious tourist with bad timing? The sane shinobi, who was clearly their leader, responded, funny. Let's see how funny you are after we have a more thorough chat. Yuan was swiftly subdued and restrained with expert precision. After that, the Kumo quartet drugged their prisoner to a nearby cave. The leader stood in front of Yuan, who was sitting on the ground, and explained, traditionally, we'd take you to Kumo for interrogation. But the interrogation squadron's methods are too slow for my taste. I prefer to get straight to the point. The leader abruptly threw a kunai into Yuan's shoulder to punctuate his statement. You know what I love about shoulder wounds? 1. They hurt. 2. You can bleed out in a few minutes due to 1. 3. They really hurt. And 4. They're easy to treat. You want to talk now? I have nothing to say, Yuan replied, his eyesight a little fuzzy. You already believe I'm a spy. Nothing I could say would probably change that. True, but you can tell us who you work for. No matter what I say, I know you'll just kill me afterward. The leader took the kunai from Yuan's shoulder and placed it to his throat. The difference, though, is that if you say nothing it means you die slowly and painfully, he said, while telling me exactly what I want to know will lead to a swift and painless death. The shadows are moving. The female squad member interrupted, Sir. What? Li, shine your light. As Yuan heard more hazy shouting, his entire world went dark. Upon awakening, Yuan was confronted by one of the most stunning women he had ever laid eyes on. You're awake, the woman said, sounding slightly amused. Yuan's gaze swept across her smooth black hair, red eyes, and pale complexion before arriving at her pristine white kimono with wide black stripes down the front and over her shoulder. The black lines rose up and off the kimono as she giggled. I was afraid I was going to have to devour a dead body instead of a nice living one. Yuan was shocked to see that they were actually spider legs rather than stripes. Yori, shouted a powerful male voice. That is enough, he is to be unharmed until after the challenge. Yuri? Yuan asked again, gazing at the legs that protruded from her back until it dawned on him. You're a Gumo. The spider that devours men. He attempted to retreat but found himself against a stone wall covered in webs. You know of me? I'm honored, Yuri, or rather Yorigumo, said, shall I play you a tune on my lute? While continuing to giggle. The voice from above said, stop it, Yuri. Once more looking away from Yuri, Yuan said, welcome traveler to the spider's den. He then looked around the cave. Every surface he could see was covered in webbing and adorned with what appeared to be shimmering red rubiaceae, that is, until they blinked and showed themselves to be eyes, spider eyes. Metal fragments and bones, many of them human, were scattered across the floor. We are the Spider Clan, and I think your people call us the Tsuchigumo, but that is just one of the many names we have gathered, such as Iktomi, Jba Fofi, or Arachne. You may call me by my favorite name, Anansi. I apologize for the mess, the voice said. My kin tend to be messy when they eat, but where are my manners? And we are the Spider Clan. I am the leader of this clan and ruler of the world. Yuan asked again, ruler of the world? Yes, we spiders have ruled this planet long before your kind first walked, and we will rule long after your species' eventual demise, Anansi clarified. But if you rule the world, how come mankind has never heard of it? Because it is our will to remain your benevolent hidden rulers. If your kind knew there was somebody who ruled the world, what would they do? I suppose many of them would fight you to take your title. Exactly, I would waste my time fighting insignificant pests who want my crown or worse. Worse? Your kind would keep coming to me to solve your petty problems. Trade disputes, bandit attacks, love. Yuan interrupted. Love? Your kind is weak and constantly seeking help. It is most likely you'd come to me for help in obtaining a mate, but enough about us. Tell me, who are you and why were the Kumo shinobi holding you? My name is Chongwan Yuan. I am a traveler, and the shinobi thought I was a spy. Anansi questioned, and are you a spy? No, Anansi appeared to frown as much as a spider could as the cave burst into a series of irate clicks. We spiders are the masters of lies. We can tell when one is lying and one is omits the truth. So once more, who are you and why were the Kumo shinobi holding you? I am Chongwan Yuan. I am a shinobi of Suna sent to gather intelligence on Kumo. So you are a spy? Not by choice. It is my mission to wander the world gathering information my nation tells me to find. Why? My enemies had me sent away from my home because I was right and it cost them. Fascinating. If you don't mind my asking, Yuan said, how do you rule the world? Yuan nodded his head, asking if he was familiar with the saying, knowledge is power. It is a phrase we spiders created that your kind picked up from us. We spiders know everything that happens within our clan's domain. Everywhere there is even one strand of a spider web, we rule. Your kind tries very hard to remove our webs, but you can never destroy them all. All webs are connected in ways your kind can never comprehend. Anansi looked at Yuan. Anansi closed 6 of his 8 eyes and cocked his head as though he were listening to someone speak. But I sense you doubt my words, so allow me to tell you what your 5K are up to. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Hokage, is in a meeting discussing a mission to Yuki no Kuni, the land of snow, with a silver-haired man who has one eye covered with his headband. A, the Raikage, is training with another younger Kumo shinobi who is rapping badly and has an odd energy within him. Onoki, the Tsuchikage, is getting a massage for his chronic back problems from an attractive woman, at least by your human standards. Yagura, the Mizukage, is talking with a man in a mask, yet the Mizukage's tone seems subservient, curious. And then finally, Tanaka, your Kazekage, is talking with 2 older humans about his son, the Jinchuriki. Tanaka turned his own son into a Jinchuriki. Why? Jorogumo interrupted their conversation by asking, can we eat him now? Anansi reprimanded, no Yuri, he must take the test first. Test? Inquired Yuan. Anansi pointed to a wall with 4 bundles of webs hanging from it and said, an all-or-nothing test. If you fail, then my clan will kill you and eat you like they did your captors. Through the webbing, Yuan could only make out the profile of his interrogator. Portions of him had been gnawed away. I could have eaten one of them, but I said I wanted you to myself because you're the cutest, Yuri said with pride. Yuan inquired, what do I get if I succeed? Pass our test and you shall not only be allowed to live and be free, but we shall also allow you to sign our contract and become a spider summoner. Are you ready? No, but I suppose I better. Anansi took a moment to process the rules before posing his query. Very well, all you have to do is answer one question correctly and you are permitted to ask one question for help. What can you give to the Spider Clan that deserves signing our contract as a reward? Think hard about it. You are only allowed one answer. What have others offered you that caused them to fail the test? Yuan asked, trying to ignore the many red jewels that eyed him hungrily. Anansi looked into Yuan's eyes, and the shinobi believed he saw a smile appear on the spider's mandibles. We have been offered a great many things. There were the ninjas who offered the support of their villages. Your associates from Kumo offered this and said they would make our clan as known and feared as the hammer that was given to them by the blonde thunder god. Members of human clans stated that they would ally their clans with ours. Soldiers have offered to introduce us to their armies to show how powerful they were. We've been offered gold, jewels, land, power, fame, respect, servitude, and a steady stream of people to feed on. I liked that offer, said Yuri. The woman was attractive and we would have gotten food. Yes, but we were going to be used as executioners to dispose of their undesirables, a task that is far, far below our station. Anansi responded. As the two spiders argued, Yuan gave his predicament a lot of thought. He realized that he was in the hands of spiders who detested lying, seemed to be aware of everything going on, and thought they were in control of the world. The only other people in the area were dead, he was alone, and his only allies were on the opposite side of the continent. I could say that I could amuse them, but what kind of life would that entail? Living with the knowledge that they would most likely kill me if they were bored. I have nothing. Yuan said, my answer is nothing. I have nothing. I can offer nothing that you could possibly want, cutting off all conversation as he met Anansi's eyes. There was silence in the room. Yuan sensed that everyone was watching him, particularly Yuri, who was staring at him hungrily as though looking into Yuan's soul. Anansi fixed his gaze on his eyes. After a moment of contemplation, the spider boss closed his 8 eyes and uttered the 2 words that would ultimately determine Yuan's fate. You pass. When Yuan realized he had been holding his breath, he let it out. He wasn't sure if the spiders were applauding or jeering as they clicked their mandibles, and Yuri pouted in a way that Yuan would have considered adorable if she hadn't wanted to devour him. Yuan said, thank you, with gratitude. Don't thank me. You gave a good answer, an answer worthy of a signer of our contract. However, do not think that just because you can summon us that my kin and I will fight your battles for you, warned Anansi. You must be strong if you are going to summon a spider. So I offer you a choice. You can leave now or stay and grow stronger under our tutelage. I would like to stay, Yuan said, but I must continue my mission even if it has abandoned me. I will not abandon my duty to Suna. Such loyalty. Anansi was impressed. You could go far. Don't worry about your mission. I'll have the young ones gather the scrolls and information you need. It could be good practice for them. Thank you, Lord Anansi. I would be honored to be trained by you and your spiders. After getting back to their room, Naruto and Anko went out in the evening and eventually made their way into one of the town's many eateries and bars, which was far from where they believed Tsunade and Jiraiya were drinking. Aren't you worried about the Akatsuki attacking us? Asked Anko. Naruto said, I'm more worried about having to spend time with the toad. Do you think he can find and convince Tsunade to join the village? The question was answered by a familiar, inebriated voice at the table they were passing. No, said the inebriated voice solemnly, Lady Tsunade will never come back. It is too painful for her. Shizune? Naruto inquired, glancing at the slug Sanin's assistant and her half-empty sake glass. Why are you here? Shizune responded, I couldn't be around her because she's going to make a mistake. Anko questioned, what mistake? I can't tell you. Then can you tell us why she won't go back to Konoha? Naruto inquired. Naruto and Anko sat down, and Anko ordered a round for their table. Sit down and I'll tell you too her story. Shizune started talking after waiting for the drinks to arrive. She told a heartbreaking story about Tsunade's brother dying while on a mission and Tsunade's lover, Shizune's uncle, dying right in front of her, which caused her to develop hemophobia and leave Konoha. Shizune then described their journey from one end of the elemental nations to the other, going from casino to casino, avoiding creditors, and obtaining taunton. She also shared a story that she probably wouldn't have told sober about the time they were in a private hot spring and their clothes were stolen, leaving Shizune to cover herself with a washcloth. She and Anko were quite inebriated from their drinks by the time she finished. Anko said, so Tsunade must have taught you a lot. Yeah, a lot about making medicine, diagnosing symptoms, and how to treat sick people. I hated every minute of it. What? Anko exclaimed in disbelief. I hate being around sick people, Shizune said with a smile. I feel weird around them, like I could catch what they've got at any second. If I could, I'd stay away from them all the time. Then why did she teach you? Guilt. She said, Dan loved her and he was all both of us had. It wouldn't have felt right leaving her alone to rot away. He wouldn't have wanted that and she must have felt guilty dragging me along, so she taught me her medical skills. It wouldn't have been so bad if she taught me the super strength stuff too. Naruto questioned, she hasn't? Says I don't have good enough control yet, not like I have time to train medic stuff when she says, run away when she says, wash her underwear when she says it's never what I want. What do you want? Called Naruto. The brunette gave Naruto a look. Shizune said, I want to run a flower shop, then I can sell people the right flowers to beautify their homes or cheer up a friend or tell somebody how they feel. As she pictured all of the joyful people, her eyes became slightly distracted. I even figured out how to make money from ninjas. I found a bunch of notes Tsunade's made over the years of all of the poisons Lady Chio of Suna made during the Second Shinobi War, and I started recreating them. But better, I've got a poison that you can pour into somebody's drink that's just like water, but it will knock them out for hours, and when they recover, their chakra control's shot to heck. Wow, said Naruto with admiration, that's amazing. It must have taken a lot of effort to create. Yeah, and I didn't ask for any help from her either. But what does she do when I show it to her? Just took the vial of it I made, grunted that it was decent work, and then asked how I was coming on identifying diseases based on the kind of lesion it produced. Shizune drank deeply and continued her tirade. Shizune paused to take another drink, seemingly to gather courage. She just takes and takes. She took Dan away from me, and then, like an idiot, I thought Dan would want me to take care of her while she was grieving, so I did, and what happens? She took away my youth, my hopes, my dreams. Shizune said. You know, I've never even kissed a boy. Everywhere I've been, every man I might have been interested in looked right past me at her and her big breasts. She won't even teach me how she did that. Grabbing Shizune's free hand with one of his, Naruto gave it a light squeeze. Any man who looks at that big-boobed old hag isn't worth your time. You are beautiful just how you are, and you deserve much, much better than you've gotten. Naruto turned to face Anko and said, we all do look at us. There are people in the world who would give anything to be the students of any of the Sannin, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Anko's betrayed her. Shizune's abuses her. I'm probably the luckiest. Mine just tried to kill me and failed. Shizune questioned, so Jiria Toad guy tried to kill you? What happened? You don't want to hear my story, Naruto replied. After pausing for a moment, Shizune said, but I want to. You heard mine, and I want to help the first, before moving closer to the blonde and looking into his eyes with a hint of something more than compassion. Friend that I've had in a long time that isn't a pig. After taking a drink, Naruto began to share his life story. She's right, Anko continued. You know how we feel, you've heard us vent, it's your turn. The brunette medic listened to Naruto's story, which had been slightly altered to conceal some of his most recent secrets, with a mixture of awe and horror. Shizune questioned, how are you not crazy? I think I was crazy, replied Naruto, and I just became sane recently. Then again, I let two guys I barely know dump a bunch of tiny machines in me. Maybe I am still crazy, so, would you like to share, Anko? No, Anko drank, sighed, and began to share her story. Anko, I know some of what happened already. Besides, who better to talk to than other people the Sannin tried to screw up, she said. It began as a trickle and continued to grow until Anko found herself discussing how special she had felt when Orochimaru had chosen her to be his apprentice, how suspicious she had become after he showed her his more dubious activities, how she had reacted when he had left her because he believed she was weak, and how the village had treated her ever since. She also talked about how it hurt to be treated as though she could call Orochimaru to her side at any time if she was unhappy. Despite everything, she kept the most sinister aspect of the tale to herself. She chose not to disclose that she had been given the curse seal because she didn't want to discuss the actual mark that was placed on her or how it felt like a black stain on her soul. You'll get him, Naruto said, and I'll do everything I can to help you. Anko looked into Naruto's eyes and saw only sincerity, and for the first time in a long time, Anko grinned after returning his violet-haired friend's smile. Naruto glanced at the wall clock over her shoulder. Have we really been talking that long? Shizune started, I should go, saying, big boobs should be stumbling back to the hotel in an hour. Shizune got to her feet, but if Naruto hadn't leapt up to catch her, she would have fallen to the ground. I think you had too much. No, I'm fine, Shizune said, releasing Naruto's hold before almost toppling over again and clinging to Naruto's arm for balance. Maybe not. Where are you staying? The Hinata Inn. With a little slurred speech, Anko said, that's across town, adding, you can sleep with us because our room is much closer. Your room? Shizune asked again, glancing at them both. Yeah, Anko replied as she stood up and put an arm around Naruto's shoulders. I'm protecting Blonde from the big, bad toady man. You can help, and then we will protect you from the old slug lady. Correction. Mean old slug lady, Naruto said. Anko cheerfully said, mean old slug lady. Hey, we can turn it into a slumber party, since you've probably never had one before. Stupid Tsunade getting in the way, Shizune complained. No. Shizune stumbled out of the bar after Anko grabbed her arm and yelled, great, come on, Naruto was left to pay the bill. Hurry, Blondie, Anko yelled back, otherwise you'll miss all the fun. Naruto grinned at his new pal's antics and pursued them until they stumbled over an invisible rock or something. After the kunoichi stood up and cleaned themselves, Anko took hold of one of her friend's arms and dragged them back to their room.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.